Hello. Hello. Check one, two, three. Check. Hello.
Stop it because 1 hour there will be nothing. No stream, nothing more happening. Here, projector and all, that's not a problem. What about participants? They will be joined by we'll push them to join us. Because there's no point of keeping the yeah. So what is make some changes? Zero. Mic, mute mic.
Hello.
Hello. Hello. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for coming to this meeting. We're happy to welcome you here. As you know, this is a meeting on the Eastern Ghats, and it's a short symposium where we will focus on the research and conservation issues of the landscape. This meeting was initiated by Professor V.V. Mathur of the National Biodiversity Authority, and Isathirupati was very happy to play a facilitative role in organizing this in Tirupati, given that we are literally in the backyard of the Eastern Ghats. So we'd like to start the meeting today with a short introduction by the Chair of Biology from Isathirupati, Professor Ramesh Sonti. I'd just like to introduce him just for just a quick introduction for people who don't know him. Professor Sonti is a plant geneticist. He did his MPhil in life sciences from the University of Hyderabad, and he holds a doctorate in philosophy in bacterial genetics from the University of Utah. Subsequent to this, he did his postdoctoral training in Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He has been a senior scientist at CCMB for many years, for much of his career. And in 2004, he was awarded the Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Prize for Science and Technology, the highest science award in India in the biological sciences category. His research has focused on understanding plant pathogen interactions using as a model rice and the bacterial pathogen Xanthomonas oryzae, or called zoo. I hope I'm saying that right. His work has led to the identification of novel zoo virulence functions, and he has led a team of scientists from CCMB and the Directorate of Science Research, Hyderabad, which have together developed a variety of rice called improved Samba Masuri, which has high resistance for commercial cultivation. After CCMB, he was the director at NIPGR, the National Institute for Plant Genetics and Research, and he has now joined us at Isathirupati as the chair of biology. So I'd like to invite him to say a few words.
Sure. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Tirupati, Isathirupati. On behalf of the director of Isathirupati, Professor K.N. Ganesh, I extend a warm welcome to all the participants in this very important conference on biodiversity of the Eastern Ghats and the way forward. We thank Dr. Mathur of the National Biodiversity Authority of India for taking this initiative to organize this conference and for giving us the opportunity to host all of you. It's a real pleasure, sir, and thank you very much for this honor that you have done to us. I will give you a very brief introduction to Isathirupati and the Icer system in general, and then the biology department of Isathirupati in particular. Now, the Icers, or the Indian Institute of Science, Education and Research, established in 2006, are a major initiative of the Ministry of Education of the Government of India. And they have basically been established to set up interdisciplinary training of students. So the idea of the Government of India is that what IITs have done to train engineers, what IIMs have done to train management executives, Icers are supposed to do the same for scientists. So the idea is to introduce science-based, high-quality education and research. More important, research at the undergraduate level. Okay, thanks. Now there are 7 Icers. So the Icer was started first in 2006, and Icer Kolkata and Icer Pune were the first 2 Icers to come up. And then there was an Icer in Mohali in 2007 and an Icer in Bhopal and Thiruvananthapuram. So the 5 Icers are what are called the G1, that is the first generation of Icers. And then the second generation of Icers, in Tirupati, it was first set up in 2015, and Berhampur, another Icer in 2016. So there are a total of 7 Icers currently within the country. And for Icer Tirupati, the mentor institute was Icer Pune. So It was started in 2015 and the courses started in 2016 itself, the first batch of undergraduate students. And this year we'll be having the third batch of students graduating from Isathirupati. And as I'll show you here, the flagship program of all Icers. Now all Icers have programs in biology, physics, chemistry, mathematics, and the earth sciences. So these are the 5 core science areas, but built in around them, there are other Icers. Some of them have courses in economics, in engineering, etc. And the flagship program of Icers is the Bsms dual degree, where after high school, through various stringent selective criteria, students are selected to enter a 5-year Bsms program. And the last year of this Bsms program is devoted completely to research. But even in the 4th year, students are encouraged to do semester projects in labs of the scientists, of the faculty in the Icers. And the first 2 years, that is again very unique part of Icers, is that in the first 2 years, all of the students, whether they study biology, physics, chemistry, mathematics, or earth sciences, all of them will have uniform training for the first 2 years in mathematics, physics, chemistry, biology, and in the earth sciences. So after 2 years, after they've got a solid foundation in all branches of science, then they choose based on their interest which area they want to move to. We also have a vigorous postdoctoral program, and Icers have over the years established themselves as really high quality institutes for providing education and training in science. At Isathirupati, we are a young institute, so our first faculty were selected in 2016, and right now we are about 50 faculty members and close to about 1,000 students. We are currently located in a transit campus in Tirupati city, but our permanent campus is coming up on a place at a village called Yerpedu, which is between Tirupati and Srikalahasti. In fact, it is closer to Kalahasti than to Tirupati, and it's about a 250-acre site, well developed, integrated, and well planned campus is coming up. One other very nice feature for us is that IIT Tirupati, their permanent campus is also coming at Yerpedu, which is about 3 kilometers from the Icer campus. So in a lot of programs, we collaborate with IIT Tirupati. We have joined programs, and students from IIT Tirupati can take courses in Isathirupati, and students in Isathirupati can take courses in IIT Tirupati. So this new national educational policy where students can now take courses in different institutions other than where they're registered, we've already been practicing it in a small scale. So at biology at Isathirupati, we are about 18 faculty members in the biology department, and we have 2 faculty members who are joint faculty members with the chemistry department. And our activities are spread across the breadth of biology because we have to teach students all aspects of biology. We have faculty who work on molecular biology, cellular biology, organismal biology, population biology, and ecosystem research. And we work on bacteria, fungi, plants, and mammals. And if anybody is interested in more details about our research, I will be happy to tell you a little bit later. Now, our ecology and evolution faculty, I don't have to introduce you Nandini or Robin, but we are very proud of the work that they are doing. Nandini, as you all know, works on trait evolution on small mammals and species responses to ecological changes. Robin works on bird evolution, biogeography, and landscape ecology and conservation. Together, they have a very vibrant group of undergraduate students, PhD students, postdoctoral researchers, and we are very keen that, and they themselves are also very keen to associate their activities with activities involved in conservation of the Eastern Ghats. Now, on a personal note, I must say that I grew up in Visakhapatnam. That is where the Eastern Ghats meets the Bay of Bengal. And I've spent a lot of my time in my youth traveling around the Eastern Ghats in Visakhapatnam district, the erstwhile Visakhapatnam district, which also included Araku Valley. And the Eastern Ghats are beautiful. There's a lot of, it's rich in biodiversity. but it is underexplored compared to the Western Ghats. And I myself can see over a period of years that there are threats to conservation of the Eastern Ghats. So we are very keen and we are very grateful to the National Biodiversity Authority of India that they have chosen to host this conference in Isathirupati. We are keen on supporting research aimed at inventorization, conservation, and utilization of the biodiversity of the Eastern Ghats. So from Isathirupati, whatever help is required for enabling any of these activities, we'll be very happy to participate in any of the activities involved with, not only the Biodiversity Authority of India, but also the forest departments of the concerned states and researchers who work in this area. We would be very happy to interact with you. And Professor Ganesh, the director of Isathirupati, could not be here today because he had another engagement, but he said he will try and come either later today or tomorrow. He sends his best wishes to all of you, and he understands the importance of conservation of the Eastern Ghats and wanted me to convey his best wishes and my own best wishes to all of you for a successful conduct of the conference. And thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Sonti. I would like to now invite Dr. V.B. Mathur to deliver the keynote address for the conference. A short introduction about Dr. Mathur. Dr. Mathur joined the IFS, Indian Forest Service, in 1983, following which he obtained his doctorate degree from the University of Oxford. He was faculty at the Wildlife Institute of India for 33 years and was director of WII from 2014 to 2019. Following this, he was appointed as the chairperson of the National Biodiversity Board in 2019. As a faculty member of WII, he was actively involved in conducting training and research in the field of natural resource conservation. His areas of specialization are protected area management, environmental assessment, biodiversity mainstreaming, and natural heritage conservation. He is currently a member of the UN IPBES Bureau, and he's also the UN CBD Conservation of Biological Diversity, Convention of Biological Diversity. He's a member from India. He's also been the chair of the UN CBD Informal Advisory Group for Developing Synergies, between 7 biodiversity-related conventions. Professor Mathur, we'd like to invite you to deliver a keynote.
A very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I must begin by saying that how delighted I am to be here this morning with all of you, with a gathering which has the academia, which has the forest department, and my colleagues, my seniors, and a large number of people with whom I have worked, and most importantly, the young researchers and students who are in the process of embarking their career in biology, if I can say so. I must also say that my effort started about 14 months back, and I actually came to Tirupati 12 months back, just to open up a dialogue with Icer. But as luck would have it, the COVID was very strong at that point of time, and the then director and other people were suffering from that. So I actually could not visit that. But thanks to Dr. Nandini and colleagues that she has been pursuing with me that what we can do. And therefore we did not give up. And we said, okay, whatever is the little opportunity, we must begin. And I feel so happy today that this small effort that we are doing, notwithstanding all the constraints over there, is basically a step in the direction where we need to concentrate. And therefore, when I was looking at the title itself of the presentation, I said that lots of things are happening. Not that research is not happening, conservation is not happening. Many things are happening, but they are, as it happens in a country, sorry to say that, in isolated manner. So we need to have a kind of a roadmap that this is what we do. And we also know the fact that there is a huge difference between the Western Ghats and the Eastern Ghats. 10 years back, I was at WII trying to nominate the Western Ghats on the World Heritage Site. And you know that 39 sites in the state of Kerala, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu and Maharashtra on that coveted list. And when we started working on those dossiers, the problem was of a different kind. There was so much information that we had difficulty in putting India's case over there. You understand what I'm saying? If you look at research, if you look at thesis, if you look at dissertations, plenty. But then we were able to put it together. And I must say to you that the Western Ghat nomination was, of course, very protracted. There is a very strict process, but we were able to do it largely because scientific studies were there. That is the point I'm trying to make, that if you want to upscale the status of any area, you need to do research, you need to generate information, you need to generate both quality and comprehensive information. And that is what I now think, that if we start focusing on the Eastern Ghats, we can put our act together, we can bring all areas and all parties together and see that how best we can improve on the conservation status of the Eastern Ghats. Now, as I said, it is a mixed presentation. The audience, of course, is well informed, but this single slide actually captures the status of the biodiversity in a country. 2% of the land, 8% of the species, 5% of the GDP, but 18% of the world's population. So see, our challenges are too many. And that is why I want to reach out again to Icer that, well, sciences and biological sciences will remain always important. Let us not undermine the social sciences. Maybe at some stage, because we are talking of an interdisciplinary nature, you will need the help of social scientists, the economists, and the political scientists also, if we are talking about conservation. So that's that. I'm not saying it has to happen immediately, but yes, there is some dose, some exposure to social sciences has to be made to the students if we want to groom them up in a particular manner. And therefore, this again is a slide for the converts, not for the converts, that biodiversity is fundamental, whether we are talking of food security, whether we are talking of plant breeding, health, pharmaceuticals, everywhere, this science has to play a very important role. So when we talk of sustainability, when we talk of sustainable development goals, how can you ever achieve them if we don't invest in biodiversity conservation? And that is the message I want to put across, that it is an important science. It is very important. As children, we learn to become doctors and engineers. Well, nothing, no harm in that. Continue to do that. But the biological sciences have a very important role to play. If I look in the future from now, this is the science which is going to hold forth everything that we do. And the current COVID has given us complete example that if you neglect nature, if you neglect conservation, it is going to have a backlash on that. Now, coming to the Eastern Ghats again here, you can see, I mean, a lot of it, as I said, is improvement of my knowledge itself, that what is the kind, and here we are in Andhra Pradesh, 40% of the Eastern Ghat area is with you. And it is very peculiar. When I was reading it, I was myself wondering what implications it has to have a discontinuous range. Because in all my life, when I look at Himalayas, I come from Rajasthan, when I look at Aravalli, I don't actually see any discontinuity. But here, that is the point, and it has implications as well. And therefore, this is what brings all of us together. When I came to NBA, my colleagues, Justin, Raghu, everyone said that red senders is the species. Sitting in North, sitting in Dehradun, frankly, I'm being very candid. I had not realized what is the importance. But when I started looking at the work of NBA, when we started looking at access and benefit sharing, when we started looking at the funds which come to that, then we realized that this is a species which we need to concentrate. Fortunately, there were committees in NBA who had identified that there are research gaps. So we then mounted an effort to get the best institutions in the country to flag what is needed for red senders research. And I'm very pleased to say that today, as a part of this event, we also have a session dealing with red senders, and my colleagues from different parts of the country with very reputed institutions are going to come and present what they have been doing. Because this species has tremendous potential, in not only in conservation terms, but also in economic terms. We will have a glimpse of it even once I stop here. There will be something to be shown to you. But the point is that this species is very important. And I now think that in the first phase, we followed a process. We got the PIs, we got the institutions interested, they've done it. But in the last 3 to 4 years, this research will also lead to subsequent questions. See, no research can solve all questions in one go. And that is where, when I talked to Dr. Nandini, I said that we must hear our scientists. They would be now in a position to tell us that what they've been able to achieve and what they need to do further. And that gap between further, see, question begets questions. Earlier, there were questions of different kinds. Now there are questions of different kinds. So how can chemical sciences, how can molecular sciences, and Icer is the place where all these sciences are being dealt with. So my interest is that our PIs, our scientists who are working should be able to flag that these are further areas of research. Well, their own institutions, their own scientists, their own colleagues can take it up, but we can also look at our colleagues in Icer, our students in Icer, who, as Professor Ramesh just explained, ample opportunities are there in terms of MSc dissertations, in terms of PhD projects and so on. So then we don't lose momentum. And I'm sure my colleagues at NBA will understand that finding a part of funding to support research on red senders will not be very difficult on the part of NBA, as long as it is relevant, it generates information, and it helps to the overall conservation of that. So I do understand that there is a very strong protection issue. My colleagues in the forest department, we made sure that they come and attend this session because they have their own story to tell. Because protection is important, what measures are required, but we need to look at both sides. We need to look at the protection side. We need to look at the research side. Then only a species like red senders can be helped. And then, of course, there are other species. Everybody knows the story of Jordan's courser and so on. I must also say that this decade is the UN decade for ecological restoration. The United Nations has declared that for a 10-year period, and anything which is now degraded, which needs to be restored, can also be taken up. So please let your imaginations run very high and wild, that if you think a particular area needs to be restored, those projects also can be taken up. It is the first time that the global community is being made to understand that restoration is important. See, you can't stop the impacts. Impacts will happen, whether you build a road or you mine or you do anything, but we forget that restoration is also possible. So in this debate in the country, when we talk of conservation versus development, it's not that we can have only conservation, not development. You have development, but also open up areas and avenues for restoration. So if something gets bad or impaired, we can do that. I've already said the story that they are much less explored, and the only answer is to explore in whatever means you can do. And I am saying that from your weekend trips, I narrate to you the story of WII. See, we encourage very early on students that if you have a weekend, if you have a holiday, you can just go to nearby Rajaji National Park, spend some time in the forest, do your bird counts, walk on the transect, count the gorals, count this, count that. That is how you actually develop a culture. And that is what is very important, sir, for Icer, that you need to inculcate and develop a culture. You just said that all 5 years, all your students are taught chemistry, biology, botany, zoology, everything. And as a part of a simple weekend, you're right now at the heart. In a half an hour drive, you can reach a place and you can start developing baselines and interest. See, the more important part is interest. So once a young student gets interested that yes, there is something in nature and there is a kind of a fascination when you go on a morning walk, then these people are automatically going to build up their own proposals, their own careers and so on. So initially in WII, we were trying to run to the student and say, look, this is an opportunity, do you want to take it? Now in the last 10, 15 years, it's the students who drive us and say, no, we want this particular aspect to be studied. And fortunately for an academic scientific institution, all research are valid. But today again, let me come back. This gathering of forest officers and of academia and scientists, we want to hear from the forest department, from my colleagues in the forest service, that what is their idea of the gap in research. We are going to have a focus group discussion later in the day. You need to spell out that this is what we need. We know this, this, and this, but we do not know this, then this. Then we need to pose this question to our academia and say that what parts you can take up, what is that which is of interest. And obviously, we need to keep in mind the interest. See, this is not a bureaucratic process that if I am given a file, I have to write something on that file. Research doesn't happen like that. Research has to have an interest, research has to have an expertise. And that is where my request to forest department colleagues is that we need to listen out to them. We need to work out a way. And no research, see, let me spend 30 seconds on that. When we joined, everybody said research are of two kinds. Research is a pure research is an academic research, and research is an applied research. But believe me, that distinction is very artificial. You cannot say this is academic, this is applied. How can you do applied work without investing your time in basic or fundamental research? So these are the kind of things, and that's why I feel that compared to any university, the Icer systems are much better placed, because that is what the originators and who established Icer had in mind, that we must talk of integration. And we must try to bring in all sciences together and see that how a particular issue can be solved. And obviously, when I was looking at it, I am very pleased to say that this NVIS Center is very, very important. A huge amount of documentation is available over there, and they've been for years doing in whatever resources they have over there. The other part, I must say, is relating to tribal communities over here. See, when we talk of conservation, you cannot escape or cannot ignore the human dimension of conservation. Plants are important, no doubt. Animals are important, but the human dimension is very important. And we have a large number of tribal communities, from Koyas to Kondas to whatever else, living over here, whose life has evolved with these systems over there. So at any point of time, because with this is livelihood. See, one of the biggest questions which is raised against conservation is, how does conservation promote livelihood? Half the time we are defending in forest department, saying that we are not taking away the livelihoods of people by setting up of national park and sanctuaries. But we need to look at it in a broader way, that how can conservation help in generating livelihoods? So then we can have a win-win situations over there. And that is where the last part which I want to come is that what is that we need to do to protect and preserve these resources? And that is where this document which you see, the Biological Diversity Act, way back in 2002, our country, our government enacted this act, and we have a mandate to see the implementation. And I was just telling Professor Ramesh that if you look at the definition of biological resource, plants, animals, microorganisms, so everything is covered over there. So if in Icer labs you are setting up a facility or a sophisticated facility of dealing with molecular sciences or anything else to do with that, that is also very, very important for all of us. So moving a little further, oops. Check that. Doesn't want to go further? You can move it if it is. It talks of also three things. It talks of conservation, it talks of benefit sharing, it talks of sustainable use. So my point of saying all this is that we need to take conservation in a very holistic manner. You move ahead and you, no, move back, 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 back. Not moving. Back, back, back. Huh? It's working? Okay. So anyway, I'll take a few more minutes because these ideas are very germane to the long-term plan that we are trying to develop. Everybody, access, everybody wants to get into our area. You have a forest, you have a resource, people want to get into it. We have no issue with getting into it, but access is linked to sharing of benefits. And that is where the Biological Diversity Act, that is where the NBA, that is where the SBBs come into picture that we need. That's a very, very important part of that. And as I said a few minutes earlier, that local communities are involved in this area. They're involved everywhere, but more so in the Western Ghats, in the Eastern Ghats, and therefore we need to take care of them. Let me forget about the functions. Let me come back to something else. See, this is what, Professor Ramesh, I want to draw your attention. We have a panchayat system. We have a local body system. Each local body is supposed to prepare a document called a People's Biodiversity Register or PBR. Okay. So this approach is basically we need to document. As you said in your first, in your introduction, inventorization. So how is that inventorization going to happen? And I am talking of inventorization of all resources in every single inch of territory of India. And if you take that, we have the biodiversity management committees set up all over the country, 2,77,000. Each has to prepare this register. And I want to come to you that what it contains. So all those things that you have talked about, all the taxonomic groups, whether you're talking of aquatic bodies, whether you're talking of forests or wasteland or pasture, wild animal, plants, including traditional knowledge, are all a part of that document. Okay. But let me show you this picture then. This is a slide from Kerala. The most advanced stage as far as documentation of resources is concerned. These are all the people's biodiversity registers made from Kerala. My colleague Justin has been involved in making several of them. But you can see, while we can take pride that these are documented, but they are all paper-based. And you can see the limitation, what is there if somebody hands you a 200-page document, what can you do with that? So therefore, if you look at the bottom line, our current effort is transition of PBR into ePBR, electronic PBR. And you know how our country is moving into the digital world. If the information is digitized, and that is where again my Icer students, researchers, faculty comes in. That today, no information, even if you want, nobody writes in a hand or this thing, but we need to have a proper transition to an electronic form. We are trying to develop a framework. We are working with the NIC. We are working with NIC Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, all states. But eventually, we should be able to do it so that we have a much better idea of our resources. And these resources are also for commercial use. So it's not that we are just documenting it for the purpose of documentation. You produce whatever scientific publication you want out of that. And this is all leading to big data set, because imagine the number of replicates that you will have. So this is what we are trying to do. Just to let you know, it is the local community which helps it, but students and teachers, I have written it, they are not currently engaged, but that is the vision for the future. That we pick up an area, you start, as they say, charity begins at home. Even if you look at your own Tirupati city, you will find out, we will let you know what biodiversity management committees are there, where it is there, where it is not there, we can do that. We can tie up with the voluntary organizations over here. Colleague is speaking from WWF today. And of course, there will be knowledgeable individuals. So see, these are the kind of data sources. That is where our young scientists are also to understand. It's not only you generate data when you walk on a transect. There are 1,000 other ways to do that. And that is where you need to pull in together to bring this over there. And then you know why it is required. It is the documentation at the village level. The local ownership is there. See, unless and every resource is tied with the ownership, that who is owning that resource. It could be a Gram Sabha, it could be a village common land, it could be with the forest department over there. And then you understand that development projects are coming. A road is coming through a patch of my area, and I need to negotiate with the government. I need to do an impact analysis and say that if you bring this road here, this is what is going to happen. These are my resources which will get affected. And you have a documentary proof. So there is a very strong legal protection. And that is the beauty of the Biological Diversity Act, that once it gets into it, believe me, nobody can easily upturn that, what is in that resource over there. I just mentioned that we are already in the process of digitizing this information over there. Okay, I can skip these. Okay, now coming back to the challenges, not that for this audience I'm saying, but there is a tremendous stress on our system. There is a tremendous level of degradation which is going on. And obviously human greed, population pressures, unsustainable. Haphazard mining. See, mining per se is not bad, provided you do in a responsible manner, provided you link it up with a restoration. You will have to do some earthwork, you will have to remove those resources, but you can also restore them. So this is what we need to weave out a story from here. Obviously, we cannot manage what we do not know. So if you do no documentation at this level, and that is where I must say to you that India's model of governance is the best model in the world. If we call it a 3-tier model system, we have the NBA, we have the State Biodiversity Board, all 28 of them, all 8 Union Territory Biodiversity Councils, but at the grassroots level, we have these biodiversity management committees. Those are the ones which are involved in resource governance and management, and that is where we need to look at. Finally, this is my last slide, gap analysis. See, the best thing which the scientific community can do, sitting in Icer departments, labs, and so on. I'm not naming any taxonomic group. We may name red senders, we may name a particular species of bird or animal, but we need to do all major taxonomic group gap analysis. And you remember what I said for the Western Ghats, we should have the same kind of a profile for the Eastern Ghats. It may not happen in 1 year, but it will happen over the period of years. Then we need to bring in convergence. The academia sitting here, the forest department sitting here, they need to spell out that what is their need and how the academia can respond. And last of my slide, especially to Professor Ramesh, and when I meet your director tomorrow or whenever, Icer systems, governance, management, and research. Permit me to say that, sir, if governance is not supportive, nothing can happen. If the management is not supportive, nothing can happen. Researchers can do something, but they need to be supported up. we need to step up our engagement. And I am offering you whatever NBA can do, whatever my colleagues in the forest department can do, whatever state biodiversity boards can do, we should do that. I think that is finally I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mathur. I'd like to call you back here, Dr. Mathur, actually for a minute. I'd also like to invite Dr. Kunikannan, Director, IFGTB, Dr. Yashodhara, Group Coordinator, Research, IFGTB, and Dr. Senthil Kumar, Scientist, IFGTB, to launch the product that they've developed through the Red Sanders project.
Come, Justin, come. Nothing can happen without your.
Please. So this is the soap made out of Red Sanders extract, bark extract, along with this Marotti oil, Echinocarbus pendandra as a base material. You can open it, sir. Yes.
So see, this is what I was saying, that biological resources have to be used. Of course, we need to have a responsible use on that. So who will explain the process at least? Yeah, please explain. Then only will accept that.
Sir,
Yeah,
please,
please. No, please. I'm just standing near you.
So this is just a week before we have made this soap. It is a handmade soap. Actually, the natural soaps are made with a base material of coconut oil and then castor oil with saponification with added flavors. Here, what we requested already, we had a project on Echinocarbus pendandra for value-added product. So it has very good antimicrobial properties. Even Red Sanders is having, bark is having very good property. Even our Rakesh Kumar, I will also explain it. So we have given Echinocarbus oil, coconut oil and castor oil along with the extracts of Red Sanders bark and made it a soap with added flavors like jasmine, sandal, and then this tulsi. These are the 4 different flavors. This is Echinocarbus pendandra, sir. Marotti. It is very good for leprosy and leukoderma.
Okay,
Yes,
thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I think you should distribute.
Hello. Yeah. We'll now move on to the first plenary talk of the event. This is Professor Pullaya. Professor Pullaya is a former professor from the Department of Botany at Sri Krishnadev Raya University in Andhra Pradesh, where he has taught for more than 35 years. He has held several positions at the university, including Dean, Faculty of Biosciences, Head of the Department of Botany, Head of the Department of Biotechnology, and Member Academic Senate. His research focuses on plant taxonomy. Just a minute, sir. I'm sure everyone would like to hear.
Please.
Floristics, embryology, and plant tissue culture. He has published 49 books, many of which are outside. Actually, I think the current number is much over that. 117 books. and many research papers and articles. He has guided 52 students to obtain their PhD degrees and 35 to obtain their MPhil degrees. He has had 2 species of plants named after him, at least for our knowledge, maybe more than 2 by now. And he's the recipient of several awards. At present, he is the president of the Indian Botanical Society. I should also mention that one of the books that Professor Mathur featured in his slides is his book.
Thank you.
So,
Yes.
yeah, and it's outside on the table if people
Yes,
would like to
yes,
see
yes,
it.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Nandini. Dr. Ramesh Shanti, Professor Mathur, and distinguished audience and my dear friends. For the last almost 40 years, we are wandering through Eastern Ghats, walking almost several times, 30 kilometers a day. As Professor Ramesh was telling, during my MSc days from Andhra University, I went on a botanical tour to Visakhapatnam, Araku Valley, and I wondered. Since then, I got interested in my taxonomy. And our herbarium, Srivastava herbarium, is internationally recognized. It is there on the internet. It is also recognized. 52 herbaria in India which are officially recognized, and ours is one, right? No? Yeah. Right. Sorry, it's not working. Yeah. Oh, that's right. Okay, fine. Yeah, this was since morning, several of the speakers are telling, they know what is the Eastern Ghats. Covering, remember here, Professor Mathur has not added, Chhattisgarh is also a little, because that Orissa border, Andhra, Telangana border, that extends, so a little Chhattisgarh. Area is 75,000 square kilometers, limits is Mahanandi in the north and Vaigai in the south. Length is 1750 kilometers, and it is, unlike Western Ghats, it is interrupted chain. Yeah, this is what Professor Mathur was also showing. We can see there, in the Chhattisgarh section, especially at the border. Yeah, these are the ranges. Perhaps many of you must be knowing Orissa. It starts with Kondaman range, Kalahandi range, Ganjam range, Gajapati range, Koraput range, Sambalpur range. These are some of the ranges. Andhra Pradesh, as some of you were telling, Parakonda Hills, Araku Hills, Yarada Hills, Papi Hills, Yara Hills projects into the sea. Remember the lighthouse that is there, is in the, where you can see Siphiphora hydrophyllaceae in that particular region only. There. So these are the Yarada Hills, Papi Hills, Kondapalli Hills, Nalamala, Sheshachalam, and Kambakam Hills. Finally, whereas in Tamil Nadu, we have several hills, the ranges like this. Yeah. Highest peaks are in 1598 meters, Turiyakonda, Mahendragiri 1506, Udayagiri 1360, Armakonda in Andhra Pradesh is 1680, Galikonda is 1643. These are the hills, Tinmara Hills is about 1155 meters, Shivara Hills is about, these are the hill ranges. Remember here, please note this point. Between 1920 and 25, it got reduced by, remember, from 43% to 27%. Please remember this point. From 40, it was 20, it was 43.4%. It got reduced by 2015, 27.5. It is not just last phase, that is almost 15.83% of the forest area in less than 100 years. That is the last number which you must remember. Well, this is a tropical region with rainfall as low. Anantapur has the second lowest rainfall in India, 13th lowest in the world. But still, in the last 20 years, some of our students describe it, several new species from Anantapur district. So that means, not as Mathur was pointing out, not much work has been done on the Eastern Ghats. There's a lot to be done. Well, temperature as 45 degrees. Today it is touching, in many of Anantapur, yesterday it was 43.5 and it is touching highest. So these are the rivers. Let me not go more. Yeah, these are the, remember, this is evergreen, semi-evergreen, moist deciduous, dry savanna, scrub, dry evergreen forest. These are the forests. Yes, these are some of the photographs which I would like to show. Yeah, as Professor Mathur was showing, Shishalam. Well, these are the protected areas I just listed. Yeah, biodiversity. We worked also on animals. Remember, this is golden gecko. Remember, this is star tortoise. It is being smuggled. It is occurs also in Eastern Ghats. Remember, almost 1 lakh specimen, and that is in Eastern Ghats also. That is a point that you have to remember. Yeah, these are some of the persons who worked in the earlier years. This is William Roxburgh, Robert White, R.H. Bedome, the forest officer, J.S. Gamble. Many of you must be knowing by this time. Yeah, this is florist. Still, let me come to you. Well, we worked on flora for almost 40 years. We brought out flora of Andhra Pradesh. I didn't bring, my books are displayed in the veranda, which you can see also. Andhra Pradesh I didn't bring because, it is 5 volumes. Whereas flora of Orissa, Tamil Nadu, then Telangana also we published. I didn't bring them. So we published it. So Karnataka, only 2 volumes have come, but otherwise, and flora of Eastern Ghats we published, we displayed there in 7 volumes. Well, these are the first 2 volumes. These are the 3 and 4. Mathur has shown our photograph of volume 5. Thank you, sir, for projecting our, yeah. Surprisingly, I found all my books are there in VR Botanic Garden, Mr. Botanic Garden, Library, Congress, all European libraries. I was literally shocked. Not because of Pullai, it is because of the resources. Please remember, sir, the resources. Whole of United Kingdom, England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales have less than 2,500 species, whereas Eastern Ghats, I'll come back, have more species than United Kingdom. Remember this. So these are, this is, yeah, fine, sorry. Yeah, this is, as she was telling, Nandini was telling, yeah. This is red sanders. We also brought out a book by Springer on red sanders, as Kuni Hanan was also telling, that we are working on this particular plant, for tissue culture and other aspects also on, also Nannari, perhaps may be knowing, we also worked on this particular plant. It is only in South India, nowhere else in the world. That is, I'll come back to that point later. Yeah, these are some of the artifacts. Well, remember here, many of you who have known this, but point is wavy grain and straight grain. Please remember, in red sanders, wavy grained specimens are more valued than straight grain ones. That's a characteristic feature. Whereas straight grain ones, and now farmers are cultivating this particular plant, but value addition has to come from this particular thing. Because santalene, yeah, as Nandini was telling, some of our students described almost since last 20 years, we described more than 50 species from Anantapur, 6th University. This is from Brachysteria pullai. We brought out a book also on Brachysteria, you can see there. This is Syruphigia pullai, once again from Anantapur district. We brought out another new species, Brachysteria nigidianum, is once again from Anantapur, Nigidi forest. This is a new species which we described from Eastern Ghats. Remember, once again, Kurnool district. Dimorphocalix carnolensis, this is a male plant. This is a female plant. This is Brachysteria ciliatum, which is very rare, once again found in Andhra Pradesh. This is another new species which we described from Anantapur district, Brachysteria nalayanam, another species which are described by our students. This is Cycas shelsha. All of you know Cycas bedomai, but this species also was described by our students, Prasanna and then Prasad from Shelsha Hills. Cycas spidica is also there. Another species which are described by our students is Euphorbia carapensis. This is Rincotia ravi, named after one of our students, professor. This is Brachysteria penchalaconense. Remember, when I asked the student, where are these plants? Only 2 plants I have found. They have described only flowers and no fruits. Very rare. You can't find Brachysteria, very difficult to find because it looks like a grass. Only when it is flowering, you can identify. Otherwise, so Prasad has described almost 10 new species in the last 10 years. That is the beauty of this particular plant. We brought out a book also, Brachysteria. This is Sennahola sericea, Itricularia, which we recorded for the first time, from this Eastern Ghats. These are, yeah. Remember here, what do we summarize? 3,417 species of angiosperms in Eastern Ghats. Whole of United Kingdom has less than 2,500 species. Remember, this is 120 species of pteridophytes, gymnosperms 8 species, angiosperms 3,417, bryophytes. I described 95 species, I will come back, but my students started working on it and they found it is exceeding 180 species. Nobody till now as you know, Professor Madhu was telling, nobody till now we took up, no, there is not a single research paper on bryophytes of Andhra Pradesh. Shocking. And so much of funds are there, but nobody tapped it. And nobody ventured into it. For the first time we have brought out also bryophytes of Andhra Pradesh and pteridophytes of Andhra Pradesh. And to our surprise, many things are new coming to it. So what I'm trying, these are some of the top 10 families. Remember here, Orchidaceae. We also brought out a book on orchids of Eastern Ghats, especially only orchids of Eastern Ghats. 192 species are there. An orchid, when I went to USA to my son's house, he bought an orchid, $20. Why don't you exploit our orchids? 192 species of orchids are there in just Eastern Ghats only. Remember, when I say 365, these are the top 10 families. Sorry. These are some of the dominant genera, Crotalaria, Cyperus, Euphorbia, Feminist style is Ficus. Ficus. Remember, there are 28 species of Ficus, whereas Leucas, 27 species. As I told you, let me show you some of the. I study only Rixia marcantia polytrichum, that's all. But I found that there are many, these are, when we started working in the initial stages, we identified 95 taxa. Then these are some of the breakup. These are, you can see these photographs of, some of the liverworts. You can see the capsules, Bsms silenensis. This is Junarchiara hirsuta. You can see that it is on palm. Remember, Anura pinguis is very small. You can see the sporocarp there. You can see the sporocarp there. These are some of the Bryum cornetum. If the capsule is like this one species, it is like this, it is one species, it is like this, it is another species. You can see this is Bryum coronatum. I have shown earlier Bryum capillare. So these are some of the pteridophytes which are tree-filled. Aluminum being bauxite is mining, in Vishakhapatnam, as some of you may be knowing. And after some time it will disappear. Jindal is mining there, near Bora caves, and after some time, I'm worried about this particular thing. These are Netum, which occurs in Eastern Ghats. These are the flowering plants. These are some of the. Look here. Wild relatives of cultivated plants are there in Cajanus. One of the scientists from Wageningen, from Netherlands, he came and worked on this particular in Eastern Ghats. Your dal has originated from Eastern Ghats. These wild relatives are there in Eastern Ghats. Remember, these are Cajanus, Cajaniferous, albicans, crassus, rugosus, then 5 species of Oreja. Of course, if you add in these two also, they will come in 7 species. Come Bulla, I show you 3 species of wild Oreja, wild growing right in the forest. Naturally, Barampuji is resistant to rice blast disease. These are some of the, this only I listed some of them, there are many more wild relatives of crop plants. Well, these are some of the, sorry. It jumped. This is wild banana. These medicinal plants, you can see there. Castor speciosus, globa mellifera. This is a wild plant, but seed costs 2 rupees. It has L-dopa, dopamine, it has medicines for Parkinson's disease. This is Abilmastus muscatus, musk oil. This is Cargillo argyritis, it has antioxidant properties. It is very common in Eastern Ghats. Right here, Arborea, it is Glutinosa. This is once again Mukuna flowers. This is Xerastus. All of you know this particular medicinal plant. Let me stress here. This is a plant anti-obesity. It's $1 billion business. America, they are selling 30 pills, $22, but the plant comes from Deccan region. Adjacent, dry forests of Eastern Ghats and Deccan region. This is what is called as, you can see there the photograph. Slima liuma. It's $1 billion business. It comes from a plant called as Carolima fumariata. When I started working, we also brought out a book on Carolima. Companies started landing in Anantapur. Where is this plant? So what point is, it is anti-obesity, suppresses hunger. That's why your fat tummy becomes small. So that in a Slima lima, size 0, remember this point. The risk-free trial also. And that plant comes from India, being sold in America with 30 pills, $22. Another, think, Pepsi, Coca-Cola, thumbs up, etc. you will get cancer after 1 year. It is not being sold in parliament. Think Namari. This is 3-hydroxy-4-methoxybenzaldehyde. It is antioxidant, anti-cancer, several medicinal properties. And it occurs only in South India. Kerala, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana. Nowhere else. We don't market it. They are advertising on Pepsi, Coca-Cola, thumbs up 300 crores and taking away to America 10,000 crores. And we don't market this one. The 3-hydroxy-4-methoxybenzaldehyde, please market it. It can be grown also. So what I am trying, this is Gymnema silvestre, Gymnema silvestre, which you all know. Right here, Tinctoria, Lumbago. This is Strychnia economica, and then Strychnia spatatorum. Let me show you this Strychnia spatatorum. In Eastern Ghats, tribals collect water from streams only. In rainy season, they collect muddy water. And how they clean? They clean with the powder of this particular, they make a paste of it, mix it, it settles. It's a bioflocculant. It settles all. Bombay Municipal Corporation is purchasing 20,000 tons every year from GCC and cleaning the water of Bombay. And comes from Eastern Ghats. That is called Strychnia spatatorum. Cleaning nuts, its name itself is. Chillaginjalo in Telugu is called as. So point is, it is in Eastern Ghats. We are not marketing. We are not marketing. This is diasporias. 80 million women each day have planning and birth control. Nature has shown that only left-handed training diasporias have diasgenin. Please remember, only left-handed training diasporias have diasgenin, not right-handed training diasporias. Nature has shown which is family planning plant, which is not family planning plant. It's $1 billion business once again. And it's there in Eastern Ghats. And we don't market. This is, cancer, anti-cancerous plant, Goya sorba. Kajisi is there, and it is very common, this is Aristolochia indica. Tribals say that wherever this plant is there, snakes will not come. It has aristolochic acid, it repels. Well, this is Ippasarai. Remember, right here, Maduka indica, or Maduka longifolia, Maduka latifolia, etc. Tribals make both with seeds and fruits and flowers, liquor. So point is, this is, when I was a student, in MSc, way back in 73, I went to the Arku Valleys, I could find, outflows of Pentana plenty. After 20 years, I took my students, to there, and gone. And, in Arku Valley, Galikona Hills, the slopes especially, we could find, this plant earlier, plenty of it. Because, rampant collection, National Biodiversity Authority, point is that, they are collecting. And then, selling it, not cultivated ones. This is the point that I have to stress. Sorry. So like what, right. Oh, it's jumping, some of the, Crotons cabioses. This is Andrographis serpilifolia. Some of the endemic plants, Andrographis serpilifolia. Hukeriana. Sorry. Jumping. Nicastisia corapensis. Crotons cabioses, it occurs only in Calabar district, nowhere else in the world. They said it occurs in Kerala, but we checked it is not. So point is, there are Nicastisia corapensis, as I was telling you earlier. Sorry. These are Balidia buxifolia. There are many endemic plants. 180. This is Merwa. And sorry. Remember, this is a plant. Yes. It's jumping. Yes. This is Entala persita. It is almost 1.5 meter, 1 meter long, and a paperweight size seed. It occurs in Talakona, here. Remember, go and see in Talakona, also in Rampachavaram, also between Rampachavaram and Bhadrachalam, also in Nalamalais. Remember, it is being, collected mercilessly and being sold in the market. After some time, I am worried, it may disappear. This is a meter long. In Indian Institute of Science also, they planted. It is almost 1 kilometer long. Vine. The lion. This is Barley tomentosa. These are some of the, yeah, Plectranthus caninus, Plectranthus barbatus, and Coleus. Occurs wild in Eastern Ghats. Now we know, Sami Chemicals, they made mint money. He went with $8 and now he's worth 1,200 crores on this plant. And occurs, this Plectranthus barbatus. This is caninus which occurs in common in Eastern Ghats. Sorry, it's not working. Right, yeah, okay. This is the plant which I was telling you. It occurs only in Seshachal, means nowhere else in the world. This is Pimpinala, Tirupati, this is only occurs. Yeah, these are some of the wild living plants. I think, my time. Right. So what I'm trying to tell is, as Professor Madhav was telling, Eastern Ghats, we brought out our flora of Eastern Ghats. Why not we bring out on fauna of Eastern Ghats? Biophytes of Eastern Ghats, lichens of Eastern Ghats, microbes of Eastern Ghats. It is necessary. So that as people's biodiversity, you are talking about village. Why not you talk of Eastern Ghats? A register must be there, document. All the plants which are listed, herbarium specimens are available in our herbarium. Anybody who wants to know, you can visit our herbarium. And I thank, funding agencies, several funding agencies. Sir, funding, they are not giving it for, if I say flora, I say molecular taxonomy, got money. Got money. No, but. So point is, so we have to make, as funds, how to generate funds. I said, this is, so that way, a little twisting. I got money and I did it. Of course, both the things. With MS Swaminathan Foundation and several other, in fact, we are bringing out several books. Biodiversity Arts for 36 volumes we are bringing out. Kumar has written one chapter in Western Ghats. We are also bringing a book on Western Ghats Sri Lanka Biodiversity Hotspot. I thank organizers for giving this opportunity. Nandini Rajamani and also Icer, and also our books are displayed. Well, you can, if you want, you can go through it, and I request you to recommend to your library. Thank you very much for giving it.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Dr. J Sri Venkateshan. Before we go to the next speaker, maybe we can break for tea, but maybe we can reduce tea break. Well, it's only 15 minutes. So maybe we can come back in 15 minutes and then we can continue with the next talk. Yeah.
told other members to be active on Zoom so that they give
Coffee now. The sandwiches also. It's your
Hello, J Sri.
Yes, sir.
Can you share your screen so that we can confirm that whether it's working fine or not?
No, I'm unable to do that. I'm speaking from my
Share
mobile.
screen option. So you are the co-host, right? You have that permission. Check.
No, I've requested that the presentation be shown from your end, primarily because
Yes,
I'm not able
Close the
to,
presentation. Just close the presentation.
I'm not able to do it because I'm speaking from my mobile. There is no power since yesterday night.
We cannot get you. Can you? Okay, I'll ask person to call you.
Hello?
Just wait. A person is calling you on mobile.
No, I'm switched off my mobile. I'm using the WhatsApp. I will wait for the WhatsApp call.
Yeah. Yeah. So I will put in the slides and the same next to that. There's some issue with that. The project is
Is it 45? Yeah. Okay, let's start.
Tested like
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We have another plenary talk for the morning, and this is Dr. J Sri Venkateshan. Unfortunately, she could not come in person, but she is online from Chennai. I'll introduce her. She's the managing trustee at Care Earth Trust Chennai, and she works on issues of conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity and ecological restoration with a special interest in wetlands. She's interestingly a native of Tirupati, and we have talked about how she spent her childhood here, walking through these hills and discovering wildlife. So this is her formative years. So she has a very close affinity to Tirupati, and we hope she'll visit us. Today, she works with multiple stakeholders across several states, especially the southern states in India, particularly Tamil Nadu, to affect policy changes with respect to ecology and conservation issues. Dr. J Sri, maybe you could. I'm not sure we can see her because she doesn't have very good internet, so we can hear her and see the slides.
Thank you, Dr. Nandini. Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes.
Sure. Is this better?
Yes.
Thank you. Respected Professor Sonti, Chairperson Dr. Mathur, Secretary Mr. Justin Mohan, dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I've actually anchored this small talk of mine in the academic domain of socio-ecology, not so much only to highlight the human dimension of conservation, but track and trace the kind of legacy issues that have plagued the Eastern Ghats, which have contributed to denudation, degradation, and the lack of attention thereof. As Professor Nandini mentioned, I am from the town of Tirupati and I've spent many years there. And more recently, I had the privilege of drafting the ecological management plan for IIT Tirupati campus. But despite that, one may ask, why have you chosen to talk about the Eastern Ghats of Tamil Nadu? The next slide, please. For the simple reason that much of my work has been in Tamil Nadu and I'm more confident about talking about Tamil Nadu, but also about the fact that there was a time in history when human beings were not as narrow-minded as we are today. And in fact, the early Tamil kingdom was defined as something that stretched from Thiruvengadam in the north, which is Tirumala Tirupati in the north, to Kanyakumari in the south, and it was bounded by the seas on the east and west. This early reference is actually from the Tolkappiyam, in fact, from the Paramparanar prefatory verse. And this very clearly highlights that people in those days at least had a larger and a much holistic understanding of landscapes. The next slide, please. Now, what essentially are we talking about when we talk about Western Ghats or Eastern Ghats? We are essentially talking about the hills of peninsular India. But unfortunately, we were classified into the Western Ghats and the Eastern Ghats by the British, given their penchant for dichotomous classification, essentially for ease of administration. And this entire classification was based on a survey that was taken up by a gentleman called Alexander Reed, a geographer who commenced his study in 1792 and ended up in 1800. This was a survey called the Geographical Survey of the Madras Presidency. It was based on this that the hills were classified into Western Ghats and Eastern Ghats. And in fact, it was Reed's work along with Thomas Munro, which contributed to the land tenurial system. The kind of arrangements that the British put in place for land tenurial systems was also based on this particular survey. As I earlier mentioned, much of the classification that the British brought in was dichotomous. You had Eastern Ghats and Western Ghats, you had productive lands and wastelands. It goes on like that. You had tribes and you had non-tribes. This kind of classification is what we are stuck with as a legacy, and much of our problems are because of this dichotomous classification, which is actually in contrast to the kind of a more broad-ranging kind of a classification that we had in place for time immemorial. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. If you really look at how we classified landscapes, we as an Indians classified landscapes, we had multiple designations because we believe that multiple designations are essential to capture the diversity and also to make sure that whatever we intervene with is apt and just. When you really look at the kind of dynastic-based classification of the Tamil region, the early Tamil region, which is from Kumari to Kanyakumari, from Trivandrum to Kanyakumari, and bounded by the seas on the east and west. So it essentially all the 4 states of South India, 5 states of South India. If you really look at it, when you look at the classification based on dynasties, it was classified into 5 great regions. The Tolkappiyam actually classified the region based on dialects, the kind of languages and the dialects that people spoke, into 13 Nadus. They call them Nadus. In fact, we still retain that in Tamil Nadu. Nadu is a classification that's based on dialect. When it comes to landscape features, in fact, this is something that's talked about a lot. It's something that we derive out of the Tolkappiyam, where we talk about the Tinai system. Erroneously, people talk about it having classified the area into 5, which is not true. The kind of ecological wisdom that ancient Tamils had classified the landscapes into 4 cultural landscapes. They did not even call it ecological landscapes. They called it cultural landscapes because for each landscape type, they had designated a human being, his livelihood, the kind of birds that you find there, the kind of mammals you find there, the plants, the avocation, everything. So it was a very dynamic system. It was a 4-point classification, and the 5th one was a condition. It was a condition that denoted degradation, denudation. In fact, if you look at how Palai, the arid zone, was defined, it is not so much a kind of a landscape-based kind of a thing, but more a condition. And the nominate deity was a person who was almost similar to Kali, very aggressive, bloodthirsty kind of a deity, who they classified as the nominate deity for the condition. That is something that we refer to as semi-arid to arid today. There was also a classification that was based on wildlife. This is something that people do not know much about, and this is something that we capture from folklore. And this has been written about extensively by an anthropologist called Brenda Beck. And this is the story of the 3 brothers. This is something that you will find if you do some decent amount of field research in Tamil Nadu. You will find this coming in from various places. The story is as follows. There were 3 brothers who went on a hunt, and the animal that they hunted is very type specific, very locality specific. For instance, in the Javadi hills of the Tamil Nadu, they talk about this cheetal. When you actually talk to people in Satyamangalam, which is in the interface between what we now call the Western Ghats and the Eastern Ghats, people talk about the black buck. When you talk to people in Koli Hills, they say the animal that was chased was actually the wild boar. Most interestingly, in Mudumalai, the local Kurumbas say that they originated exactly based on this particular story, and that the animal that they tried to hunt was the sambar. So this common story actually is very wildlife specific, and based on where you hear it from, you can actually identify the most charismatic species. That is the kind of depth of understanding that people brought in those times. Then, of course, you have what is now designated as the Congo region. If you really look at Congo region, the reason I picked up Congo region is because it demonstrates the point that I'm making, that there is nothing called Western Ghats and Eastern Ghats in ancient society. It was hills of peninsular India. The Congo region actually was bounded by 49 hills, the northernmost of it being Koli Hills. This is a designation that we get from a work by Aroke Sami in 1952. Next slide, please. I'm focusing a bit on Koli Hills, not only because it's a very fascinating range of hills, but also because I did my thesis, my doctoral thesis from this landscape way back in the 90s. If you really look at Kolli Hills, Professor Pulaya showed a slide where the altitude was mentioned as 1,500 meters above sea level, the highest point in Kolli Hills, very accurate. The structural resemblance of the high elevation forest and the floral and faunal affinity of this particular place very clearly demonstrate that it's a biogeographical relic. It has shared endemic species with the Western Ghats, some of which have been mentioned here, a plant, an amphibian, and some birds have been mentioned here. We have not, of course, mentioned the more recent records that we have put. We've been able to cull out of this place. But what is more interesting is the kind of evidence that we get from history. In fact, Short in 1870, in one of the work, gazetteers mentions the presence of a large number of hornbills. And the earliest missionary to this place, Jessamine Brand, in 1910, records the presence of sloth bears. In fact, he even records the areas, the forest within Kolli Hills where these sloth bears were known to frequent. Pit vipers have been recorded in good numbers by Ramaswamy in 1967. All this demonstrating the affinity of Kolli Hills to the Western Ghats. If we can still sort of talk about it as Eastern Ghats and Western Ghats, it's just a kind of a corridor, a kind of a connectivity that exists between these two places. Next slide, please. The misnomers actually are not typical only to the hills. It's not just the hills and the landscape that the British classified into a dichotomous system, leading to a lot of problems, but also the people who dwelled in this area. Castes and tribes was a favorite kind of a designation that the British used to divide us, to make sure that we were treated as two distinct entities. The biggest problem in the Tamil Nadu part of the Eastern Ghats is the designation of a large number of tribal groups into two categories, Malayalis and Irula. So if you read through recent literature, it will always begin by saying these are numerically the largest group of tribes who are found in Tamil Nadu. The fact of the matter is a number of tribes were clubbed together into two distinct categories, making them or giving them this artificial designation of being numerically the largest. They are very distinct. In fact, anthropological evidence provides evidence to the fact that the Malayali is not the Malayali of Kerala. This is hill dwellers. Malay is hill, Ali is dweller. The hill dwelling tribe of these four ranges, at least Kolli, Shavarai, Pachai, and Javado, are very distinct. There's no commonality between them except that they have been all put into one category. So, the research also has suffered. If you studied one Malayali group in one hill range, people tend to extrapolate it to other ranges, much to the disservice of the people who are living there and the kind of conservation traditions that they had. What is also suppressed by this kind of a misnomer is the fact that these people have a traceable kind of a lineage, beginning with the early tribals who are the Vedas. The Vedas are the hunter tribes from whom the Malavars came in, and then of course the Malavars along with the Vellalars who are the agrarian community constituted the large number of people, the tribal people that we see as Malayalis. What is also very interesting about Kolli Hills is the fact that it has an affinity to Kerala. It has an affinity to Kerala by way of the dynastic classification. Kolli Hills was a minor capital of the Chera kingdom, which also tells us that there should have been or would have been some kind of a cross-fertilization of thoughts, of conservation traditions. Much of what you see in Kerala can also be observed in Kolli Hills in terms of traditions. In fact, there is this very famous king called Kulasekara Alvar, who's also a Vaishnavite saint. Kolli Hills was his minor capital. In fact, when I was doing my doctoral work, much of the literature that I referred to came from the Nalayara Divya Prabandham, where there were very clear evidences, very clear ideas about the landscape features of Kolli Hills. Next slide, please. More recently, during the British time, we've had committees such as the Ayyappan Committee. Ayyappan was the commissioner of museums of the Madras Presidency, and then there was this Aboriginal Tribes Welfare Committee, which designated Malayalis as non-agency tribals. The Ayyappan Committee is very, very pertinent to what we are discussing today. It talks about the kind of similarities, the kind of convergence that exists between all the tribal groups of Peninsular Hills, but also talks about the kind of distinct identities and the distinct conservation traditions that these communities have. This particular committee makes a recommendation saying, please carve out a kind of a program that takes into consideration the conservation traditions of the tribal groups. It talks about the need to recognize the diversity of forest types that exist in the Eastern Ghats, and it talks about the need to promote development with caution. In fact, it puts the word development within quotes. So a report like this in 1942, I think, is something that we really have to celebrate. The sad part of it is none of this was followed. And of course, we came up with our own set of programs and policies that today have contributed to much of the area being disseminated. The Malayalis of Salem, Trichy, and North Orchard, interestingly, were under the Royatwari system of revenue administration. The Malayalis of South Orchard, especially Javadi Hills, were under the polyglot system. This is something that friends from the Forest Department would very well align to, because it is this which continues to plague the kind of settlement issues that we have in Kalrayan Hills and Javadi Hills even today. This was something that was put in place by the British. And even today we are suffering because of this. And many researchers who work in Kalrayan vouch for this, that the kind of degradation and land grabbing that goes on there is phenomenal, and nothing much can be done about it, primarily because we have these legacy issues. Richards, Hemingway, Thurston, and Rangachari Lefanu categorically state the distinction between Malayalis of various hills. But unfortunately, till today, we've not paid heed to this particular, this kind of an assessment, or not the need to distinguish and make distinct interventions amongst the tribes of the Eastern Ghats of Tamil Nadu. Next slide, please. I would always say the Eastern Ghats are actually forests of a lesser god in comparison to the Western Ghats. And I would like to stick to this kind of a very strong statement, primarily because when actually the British were trying to colonize southern India, one of the records of the company, which we tracked from the state archive, clearly mentions the need to capture the Salem-Baramahal district. In fact, there is a mention saying this is a point, or this is a landscape that we have to intervene in first in terms of capture, primarily because the land tenure systems there are amorphous, and it will give us a good grip in terms of trying to bring control over it. We can actually take control. This is a line that you actually see in a correspondence during the East India Company time. In fact, what they also brought in very effectively in the Salem-Baramahal regions, where Tirupatur was the capital, was the restriction of existing forest rights. I firmly believe that this is what contributed to the entire landscape becoming a kind of a absolute control under the British kind of a system. And then, of course, what is not very much known, in contrast to the forests of the Western Ghats being degraded for railway sleepers and construction of cities of Coimbatore, and the kind of World War I supply where grasslands were denuded and grass was shipped to Egypt and other places by the British. In Eastern Ghats, especially in and around Kolli Hills, there was large-scale prospecting of iron ore, Kanjimalai, Tirthamalai, Kollimalai beds. And there was also a kind of a company that was established by a person called Thomas Holland in 1830 with absolute freedom to extract as much timber as possible from the forests of the Salem-Baramahal region. This not only destroyed the forest very rapidly, but also contributed to the local knowledge being degraded. Now, why was the iron ore industry established there? The fact that it was available may be the most apparent reason, but also the availability of skilled labor. Virtually, this was something that the British got on a platter and they exploited it to the hill. Sandalwood felling also went about in this place without any question. It was rampant, so much so that when finally assessments had to be made, all that there were left were some stands heavily infested with spite. Next slide, please. If you really look at conservation traditions and practices, I'm actually trying to summarize about 25 years of my work into a few slides. So I may come across as being very terse and very ad hoc. Please bear with me on that. Eventually, when I do get to write a paper on this, maybe it may have far more detail. Until 1900, Kolli Hills was the only hills in the Baramahal district where wet cultivation is practiced. So that's the kind of agrarian knowledge and conservation tradition that these hills have, none of which have been factored in. There's enormous diversity of minor millets. Professor Pulaya also spoke about minor millet diversity in that area. But what is also not very well known is there were 17 cultivars of banana. In fact, the Francis Gazetteer of Salem in the 1900s speaks about these 17 cultivars and the places where they are found. And it in fact states that the banana diversity of Kolli Hills is only next to Kanyakumari. But today, if you go to Kolli Hills, all that you see is just two varieties of banana, both hybrids and imports. The local cultivars are totally gone. But in 1993, when I was working there, we were able to trace at least 6. But today, you don't find any of it there. The other aspect that has not been recognized or looked into or captured or documented is the kind of ethno-veterinary tradition that the Kolli Malayalis have. In fact, the British cavalry used to be totally supported by the kind of traditional medicine, ethnoveterinary practitioners that the Kolli Hills had, and there is a record which says that these people were actually taken to these stables for the horses and other animals to be treated by the Kolli Malayalis. The kind of formulations that they used were also indicated, but of course we have no idea as to what these formulations were and what kind of practices went into developing these and what kind of surgical procedures that the Kolli Malayalis knew. Interestingly, when I was doing my work, I also found that birth spacing was something that the Kolli Malayalis effectively practiced by using a combination of contraceptives and also medication. Well, of course, at that point of time, neither did I have the bandwidth nor the kind of access to document it, but I really have serious doubts as to whether it's still prevalent. Because some of the practices that the Kolli Malayalis have when it comes to childbirth will today be termed as also very cruel and illegal, because they have this practice of abandoning children when they find that the children are weak, just like the animals. They abandon the newborns if they designate them or if they find them to be a bit weak into the forest. And in fact, the early missionary presence in the Kolli Hills was primarily to make sure that these children were rescued and given a life. Next slide, please. So what are the misdemeanors? A number of misdemeanors, starting with the lack of research in this area, lack of attention to this area, because primarily people prefer to go to the Western Ghats, and more recently I find people don't even prefer the Western Ghats, they prefer the Northeast. Because we are always chasing down the more charismatic landscapes, charismatic animals, the mega mammals, points of origin of rivers, none of which Kolli Hills, at least, Eastern Ghats currently have. The kind of diversity that Eastern Ghats has is still very hidden, and it's not very attractive to researchers. Unfortunately, that is the case. But the kind of misdemeanors that the system put in place begins with malaria eradication and use of DDT. This is something that the local people have repeatedly mentioned in all the hill ranges of Eastern Ghats and Tamil Nadu that we've researched on, saying that was a kind of a watershed kind of a period where much of the kind of totemic species that they had, the kind of sacred landscapes that they had, the kind of sacred groves that they had, were all compromised upon because they were used for malaria eradication. The second program that actually played havoc with these easterly hills, especially Kolli Hills, was the Integrated Tribal Development Program and the kind of large area multipurpose societies that they brought in. Because these two effectively made sure that the agrarian fabric, agrarian template of the place was totally changed into a horticulture-based, cash crop-based kind of a system. From a system where you had enormous diversity of minor millets, in fact, all four major minor millets, as well as fruit-bearing crops, you were shifted to a tapioca and pineapple-based kind of a system, which played havoc. This also contributed to a large number of forests being encroached upon, because if you really look at Kolli Hills, it's like a piece of cake. The top part of it is flat and it has a lot of shola forest, but the slopes are all where the reserve forests are, and people use the growing of tapioca very effectively to encroach or attempt to encroach upon the reserve forest area. The next system that actually brought in a lot of havoc, at least around the shola forest, is the bauxite mining that went on until the department stepped in big time and made sure this was stopped. But it went on effectively for a little over 16 to 20 years, completely degrading the top portion of the hill. In fact, you have craters there where there used to be tall trees, shola forest. Then the horticulture missions that have been put in place. These horticulture missions have really played havoc with the place, essentially focusing only on 2 or 3 horticulture crops. They made sure that the diversity of the area was totally compromised upon. Finally, of course, universal PDS. From a system where you had millet-based diets, when you forced communities to go in for a rice-based diet, a lot of conservation traditions were lost. In fact, one of the things that we studied was looking at the knowledge systems across generations, and we found that even in Kolli Hills, a place which is actually in the lap of nature, the younger generation had absolutely no idea about the kind of diversity they have. We, in fact, did an assessment where we showed a series of pictures of birds that are typical to the region. While the senior citizens were able to identify all of them, the younger generation was able to identify at best 4 to 5 species. This is the kind of loss that we find. So more recently, when we had the opportunity to actually go into the same regions to look into the PBRs, the kind of work that the People's Biodiversity Registers are being drafted with, we found the same kind of a scenario. In fact, when we asked to name some animals that are typical to the region, people named the animals like rhinoceros and hippopotamus. That's the kind of knowledge erosion that you see happening in this place. So in summary, what we are saddled with is the kind of legacy issues that were put in place largely during the colonial rule of India. Eastern Ghats thankfully was, no, I shouldn't say Western Ghats was thankfully spared a bit, but Eastern Ghats actually bore the brunt of this kind of legacy issues. And I think it's time we correct this, or at least make attempts to make sure that we research into it and come up with means by which this kind of a lacuna, this kind of shortcoming is overcome. Thank you.
Thank you for that really interesting talk. Very different perspective about the Eastern Ghats. So now we move on to the next session, which is a special session on projects focusing on red sanders. I'd like to call Dr. Amit. Amit. Sure. Sure, we can spend a few minutes asking questions. Does anybody want to ask questions to any of the plenary speakers? Who had some questions? All right, if we don't have any questions right now, we'll move on. Thanks again, Dr. J Sri. And we'll ask the first speaker, Dr. Amit Kumar Srivastava, to come and talk about his project.
A very good afternoon to all of you. And first of all, I would like to thank the organizing committee, Isathirupati, and Chairman NBA for organizing this meeting in person. So it's really good. Now we moved from virtual to actual platform. And today I'm going to discuss about the project which is funded by NBA. The title is Bioassay Guided Isolation of Anti-Cancer Compounds from Pterocarpus santillinus and Assessment of Cytotoxicity, Pharmacokinetics, and Detailed Molecular Mechanism. So in this project, I am the principal investigator, and Dr. Deepak Kumar, he is a chemist. He is also here with me, and he will give presentation. He is a chemist, so he is a co-PI in this project. So this is my previous work. So my lab, so I am a cancer biologist, and my lab is basically we are focusing on to study the mechanism which leads to the drug resistance in cancer patients. I'm not going to detail. I'm coming to the projects. So these are the some previous studies, published studies. So many people have shown the role of anti-cancerous role of this red sander extract against gastric cancer, cervical cancer, breast and liver cancer. And also they have shown that the red sander root, like it induces the apoptosis. Apoptosis is basically programmed cell death. And also it is helpful in the wound healing, and also it reduces the UV-induced mutagenesis. But most of these studies, they have done only in vitro system using cell lines. And most of this study, if you see, it is from China only, Gao et al, and then Quan et al, Li et al. So mostly Korean and Chinese people, they have done the this kind of study. So here we have proposed to study the anti-cancerous potential of red sander root on 2D system, 3D system, and also on the mice model in vivo system. So we will complete all the preclinical validation of the red sander extract. So, so in case of cancer, most of the problem is like most of the patients, they die from the drug resistance. So, and it is believed that this is the small population of cells, cancer stem cells. It is responsible for this therapy resistance. And so the cancer stem cell may be described as a small population of cells that drives tumor growth and progression. So this primary tumor, this contains the heterogeneous population of cells. So there are different kind of cells like a tumor cells, epithelial cell, fibroblast cells, and also the cancer cell, cancer stem cells. So these cancer stem cells, they having the self-renewal and differentiation ability. So they have potential to regrow and they can form the new tumor. And if we treat any primary tumor with any chemotherapeutic drug or radiation, so it will kill all the differentiated cell. Only these cells will survive. And since these cells having the self-renewal and differentiation ability, they can regrow and they can form the new tumor. So here we are also testing the anti-cancerous potential of red sandalwood extract and compounds on the cancer stem cell. So it's going to helpful in two ways. We are thinking to target primary as well as secondary tumor. So, so this is the aim, first aim, bioassay guided isolation of anti-cancer compound from this red sandalwood plant. This is the second aim, to evaluate the cytotoxicity and pharmacokinetics properties of the isolated molecule. So here we have proposed to do the MTT assay, colony formation assay, live date staining, and then also the some histopathology analysis of the lung, liver, kidney, and spleen, and then pharmacokinetics analysis. Then we want to evaluate the anti-cancer potential of the isolated molecules of the pterocancer centillinus in 2D and 3D system. So these are the assays, MTT assay, colony formation assay. Also, we want to study the level of reactive oxygen species, apoptosis. And as I told, we also want to study whether it's depleting the stem cell population or not. So this is here the it's stem cell culture. So this is the spheroid culture, and this is basically enriched with the stem cell population. So this is the 3D system. We have also established this model in our laboratory to evaluate the anti-cancer potential of isolated molecule from 2D and 3D system and in vivo models. So in vivo model, we have proposed the xenograph model as well as the orthotopic model using this IVIS imaging. And then we also plan to study the detailed molecular mechanism, how this Pterocarpus centillinus plant extract as well as compounds, how they are inducing the cancer cell death. What are the mechanisms? So this might be the some pathway which is very popular in cancer. Now coming to the work. So first we isolated the, first we collected the plant sample from West Bengal Aravalli range, and then we extracted the, we prepared the methanolic extract, and then we extracted in different solvent, toluene solvent, ethyl acetylate solvent, butanol solvent, and aqueous fraction. And first we perform the cell viability assay. Here we can see that this is the toluene fraction. So here IC50 is lowest. That means this fraction has a good activity. So we further selected this fraction for the further studies. So this is the ROS generation result. So ROS is a very important signaling molecule, and ROS is known to induce expression of thousands of the gene. So that's why first we check the ROS level, and here we can see it's a dose. We can see the dose dependent increase in the ROS level, and also this is the result from flow cytometry. Here we can see the dose dependent increase in the MFI value. So this is the mechanism how this ROS, they basically induce the damage of the cancer cell. And this damage, basically it induces the DNA damage response, which further leads to the cell death. So this is the, again, DNA damage assay, COMET assay. So here this tail is basically showing the damage. So here we can see the tail. So it significantly increases the COMET positive cells. And this is the level of gamma H2X. Again, this is the FACS result. So this blue population is showing the gamma H2X positive cells. So if any cell, if there is a 50 gamma H2X, that cell will die. So here we can see the dose dependent increase in the formation of this gamma H2X. So this toluene fraction significantly induces DNA damage in the cancer cells. So, this DNA damage itself, as I told, it's like a signaling based mechanism. It induces various pathways. So it induces DNA damage response. So the first step is if the DNA is damaged. So this is little bit hardcore molecular biology. So if DNA is damaged, so there would be, because the cells, they have the repair system also. So they have capability to repair itself. Or sometimes they can bypass the repair to synthesize the DNA. So what they do, so once there is a DNA damage, So there is a ubiquitinylation of the PCNA. And this monoubiquitinated PCNA, this basically recruits many polymerases. So this is translesion DNA synthesis. This process is called translesion DNA synthesis. And there are various polymerases like DNA polymerase ETA, kappa, Rev1, Rev3. So various polymerases. And these polymerases, basically, they help in the bypass of the lesion. And so that they will continue to synthesize DNA. And this will lead to the development of drug resistance. This is how cancer cell escape treatment of any therapeutic drug. So here, interestingly, we found the treatment of this red sander extract. This significantly induces the expression of this monoubiquitinated PCNA. Here we can see it is control. It's a dose-dependent increase, the top band, and the lower band is the endogenous control. It is a PCNA. So, and this is again another assay for the DNA damage. This is the micronuclei, the pink color one. So in control, here the population is less, and now we can see the dose-dependent increase in the formation of the micronuclei. So now we are thinking it might be the one mechanism that this toluene fraction, it basically induces the ROS, and this induces the formation of the DNA. It might induce this phosphorylated ERG, which may promote the apoptosis. So this is the proposed mechanism, how red sander, this toluene fraction is working, how it's inducing the cell death. So this is then we tested on the stem cell population. So basically this scope 3 is a ovarian cancer cell line. So we treated the scope 3 cells with this red sander extract and then seeded in the ultra low attachment disk with a cancer stem cell media. So this is here, this is the colony we can see. Here we can see the reduced number of colony in the treated group. And then we grown the stem cell and then we directly check the therapeutic efficacy on the stem cell population. So this is the control population. Here red color is showing, green color is basically live cells and the red color is basically dead cell. Here we can see the dose dependent increase in the red population. So at higher dose, it also depleting the cancer stem cell population. Then we check this extract in the nude mice. So we injected the cells in the mice. So this is the control group. Here we can see the tumor. And this is for the treatment group. So what we did, the OCAR3 is again an ovarian cancer cell line. We treated the mice. We generated the tumor subcutaneously. And when it increases to like 0.5 centimeter in diameter, we divided the mice in 2 groups, minimizing the tumor weight and volume. And then we treated with the extract, this 500 mg per kg body weight, twice a week for 3 weeks. So here we can see the significant reduced in the tumor weight. So that means the in vivo condition also, this red sander plant wood extract, it's decreasing the tumor burden in the mice. So we have also proposed the orthotopic model. We have already developed, this is the IVS imaging, and this is the blood leukemic cell line, Raji cells. So we have established this is the IVS imaging. So we have already established the model. And now the orthotopic this model in the nude mice is ongoing. So we are anticipating in next 2 months, we will have the data also. And then we after this sacrifice the mice, we taken out the tumor and then we tested the various proliferative marker. So this is again, we tested the level of this gamma S2X. And here we can see the increased expression of the gamma S2X in the treated group as compared to the control group. So this result is very interesting actually. We did this subacute toxicity and hematological parameters. So we performed this study in the BALC mice. This is C15 BL6 mice. So so we treated the mice for a week, 500 mg per kg body weight. It's a daily treatment for 1 week. So this is and then we check the liver toxicity. So there is no toxicity in the liver. But one thing which we noticed here, which is very interesting, if we see the RBC count. So just 1 week treatment of this red sander root at this higher dose, this 500 mg per kg body weight, it's not producing any toxicity and it increasing the red blood cells and increasing the hemoglobin content. This experiment was done on the just 3 mice. So now, I mean, we should, because here it's like more research is needed to see its therapeutic value, because this is the first time we notice this observation, and we need to do this on the more number of mice just to make sure that our finding is like validated. So this is very interesting. So it might be possibility this extract may also induce the regeneration of the bone marrow cell, which is like helping in the generation of the RBC counts. So moving to the next. So then we did this bio-guided isolation, and this is the various compound we isolated from the toluene fraction. So Dr. Deepak has done this study, and he will explain more about it. And now, so as the committee was suggested last time, we did the comparative study of this cytotoxicity of the red sander from the West Bengal as well as Andhra Pradesh. So it looks like the Andhra Pradesh, though the difference is not big, but it looks like our initial finding is showing the AP sample is better than the West Bengal samples, because here we notice lower IC50 value as compared to the West Bengal samples. So we are still validating these results. So with this is very initial findings. And this is the model we have established our laboratory, as I showed earlier, like even we are able to encapsulate the single cell in the polymer. So with this, I would like to thank NBA for the funding, and also my director, Dr. Arun Bandyopadhyay. And our lab is getting funding from CSIR, DBT, SERB, NBA, ICMR, and also Ayush Mantralaya. We are developing some Bhalla Modika with Ministry of Ayush. And right now, 4 PhD student, 2 project student, and 1 trainee is working with me. So thank you very much. I'm open for any question. Yes, sir, please. It's a hardwood.
Hardwood.
Yes.
Right. But you know, remember, we have santalene also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, but you are eliminating santalene, or you are?
Yes. We are eliminating.
Because you know you are saying, you know, as a guided isolation of the compound. So santalene it may be interfering. Yes.
So I'm the chemist in this project. So as we can see, we have done the bio-guided isolation, and then it has been done based on the solvent polarity. And then all the activities what Dr. Amit has shown is on the toluene fraction, which is mostly devoid of the santalene, because that will be enriched in the polar part. So here mostly we see, you can go to the chemical structure. Yeah, so those are basically sesquiterpene and coumestin class of molecules. The coumestin class of molecules are being reported first time from the West Bengal material. Earlier phytochemical studies were mostly done by the Chinese group, and they have reported basically new lignans and benzofurans. Right. So our study clearly says that what Chinese has reported, we are unable to get those compounds. How they have reported it, I think for the. Yeah.
You have taken it up from West Bengal.
Yes.
But there may be plants which are growing in other places also.
Yes, cultivated, yes.
Just compare, because of the environmental soil profile also may affect. Then second thing is, there are different varieties of red sanders. I told you in the morning, you know, wavy grain and straight grain.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Please check them.
Yeah, sir. Actually, this project we got extension till September. So I hope by that time we would be able to finish this West Bengal and this Andhra Pradesh one. We will be able to finish all in vivo studies.
Places also.
So
there may be variation, you know, not only from West Bengal to Andhra Pradesh. You know, in Andhra Pradesh also places, you know, a little variation.
Yes, of course there would be variation.
You know, we are studying, you know, molecular markers, you know, those particular things, and they show a lot of variations.
Mm-hmm.
So that also you must. I mean.
Yes.
After some time.
Yeah. Maybe in future we can think.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Is being used as timber.
So we must congratulate NBA for funding a project in new dimension. So till now we know that red sand is being used only as a timber in China or Japan, but now the potential is in horizon that it can be used for treatment of cancer. So I congratulate all the team of Mr. Amit Kumar Srivastava.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
So they should come out with more valid reason and result also, so that can be put into commercial use.
Yes,
thank you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Saying that, you know, whether are using her for radiation protection. I mean, I don't know how far it is true. NBA should not. I mean, this, somebody is saying yes, not correct. Right. Okay.
It is actually there is huge demand in China.
For musical instrument, they are saying in a musical instrument Shaolin.
No, not only that, they simply use it, even sir had gone, I think.
Right.
It is actually mainly used for furniture. Chinese
Right.
are mad after senders furniture.
Right.
And since they don't have this species, they have tried to take this species there, but it was not successful.
Right. Thank you, sir.
But
Yeah.
Doctor, my
Yeah.
suggestion
Yes, sir.
would be that while all your objectives have been fulfilled, now you have a conclusive evidence that this is actually maybe a potential cure for cancer.
Yes, yes.
But what is your future plan? How you are planning to take it up with ICMR or the Ministry of Health? Or
So the future plan is, first thing is, see, this red sandalwood extract itself, we can't give as a treatment, but it can be given as a adjuvant therapy. So the now my future plan is, because since I'm mostly focusing on the HR mutant cancer, which is breast and ovarian cancer. So now I'm thinking to use the combinatorial effect of platinum-based drug like cisplatin along with this red sandalwood. So now the idea is, because in clinics, the cisplatin dose which is being used is very high. So now we can try with a lower dose of cisplatin along with this red sandalwood extract. So that can be taken. The first thing. And another thing is one very interesting finding which I have shown here. It increases the RBC counts. So maybe we are thinking that, because we have a collaboration with Ministry of Ayush, so maybe some product, some syrup kind of things can be developed as a like blood enhancer. So with that, we can maybe develop some product in the future based on this preliminary data. So this is our plan. Yeah, we will publish. So once this comparative study is done from West Bengal and Andhra, so we will publish. This year we will publish it.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, please.
The ICMR has another institute in Belgaum, which is called the National Institute of Traditional Medicine.
Okay.
I'm sure you must be aware of it.
Yes, yes.
So they are also working on some of these products. So are you in touch with them, or how is it?
No, I'm. But if you are telling, I can inquire which scientist is working on it. Maybe I will contact with that scientist and get their feedback.
Yeah, actually, sir, there's a National Institute of Traditional Medicine in Belgaum, sir, and it's an ICMR institute which is almost from 2006 it's been working, and they are doing a lot of research on traditional medicines, and one of them is on Santalennus also.
Okay.
So,
yeah, so I'm aware of that institute, and actually the director of that institute, he recently retired. He was earlier scientist in one institute in Kolkata, ICMR. He was director there. And we have some collaboration, like institute-wise collaboration is there, and he regularly visits our institute. I forgot his name. We call him Devi Prasad Mukhopadhyay or somebody. We call him Devida. So he regularly visits our institute. So we can, through him, we can connect the scientists and then see what exactly they are doing and how we can collaborate further.
It's a very impressive work that you are doing. Just like Mr. Mohan told, what is the end product of your research? On that, you must having a plan.
Yes.
So, and my session is evaluated economically.
Yes, sir.
How it will work out cost effectively, what cost effectivity of that ultimate end product.
So
that because Red Sanders has to find some utility in India.
Yes. So the thing is, as I told, now after this, like by September, I think we will have all the preclinical data. So based on this preclinical data, maybe we can write to other funding agency for further, because see, even the preclinical validation, again, it requires validation by various agencies to be being used in the clinics by some NABL accredited laboratory. So we can go to the next step. We can propose something clinical trial along with this red sandalwood. It can be done in Ayush mode or in phytopharmaceutical mode. So that we can do. So Yes. So, so in CSIR system, like if we have some proof of concept, so it is easy to get next funding. So, yeah. Yeah. So no, there is already roadmap because it will be monitored by a committee. In CSIR, we have a system like any fast track project. Its monitoring is very rigorous.
The earlier the better. Your results should come earlier the better, because as per our records, about 2,000 metric tons of red sanders moves outside this country.
Yes.
So if you can come up with a solution for cancer, I think we can take it up with the DGFT and Ministry of Health and stop that and use this for our own cancer treatment.
Yes.
All right, thank you. If there are no more questions, we can move on to the next talk. Dr. Deepak Kumar.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. So basically, I'm a phytochemist. And when this proposal came, actually, I discussed with Amit, and then we devised two projects in such a way that one way we can do a complete biological activity or pharmacological activity concerning the anti-cancer activity, connected with the pure phytochemistry, linked with some of the anti-diabetic activity, because this plant or plant tumblers are also used for anti-diabetic purpose. And one of the very related species, that is Pterocarpus marsupium vijaysar, it is like being exploited like anything for the diabetes treatment. And for vijaysar, CSIR and ICMR has done tremendous work in previous years. So that was the reason behind selecting this plant, because they have the molecular, based at the phytochemical level, they have the similar chemical structures. So that was the thing. So this work is mostly about the phytochemistry part, linked with some of the diabetes, and there is also some rationale behind it. So I'm working as a scientist, hardcore natural product chemist at Organic and Medicinal Chemistry Division, CSR IICB. This is the unique institute which was founded in 1935. This is the oldest biomedical research center in the country, which was established in Calcutta. And right now it has two campuses. One is at the Jadavpur, the old one, and the new campus at True campus, that is in the Saldak. These campuses are 12 kilometers away. Dr. Amit is working in True campus and I'm in Jadavpur campus. My laboratory, that is the Natural Product Research Laboratory, NPRL ISB, situated at Jadavpur University, Jadavpur campus. This is just opposite to Jadavpur University, and I'm basically working on all the aspect of natural product. Now, as we are all aware that India is like biodiversity is very rich, lot of medicinal plants are there, and then over the year, initially we had the regulatory compliance for the Ayush mode, basically, and then the DCGI as a single molecule. Then over the year that FSSI came in, where this plant extract can go as a nutraceutical agents. That was somewhere around 2010. They started 2003-4 around and finally established all the regulatory compliance. And then in 2015, a new regulation came. Over the year, the scientists in ICMR, CSIR and other institute realized that the Ayurveda is a unique concept wherein a single molecule cannot be developed as a drug, but rather the combination or a single plant extract having a combination of the molecule having a better activities. And over these years, after a lot of discussions, the regulatory agency, DCGI, came up with a new regulation, that is the phytopharmaceutical drug regulation. And it is also having a strict compliance, a regulatory compliance, which needs to be followed like a single drug, what we develop. So right now, the question came that what is the next roadmap? So there could be three roadmaps. One is as a nutraceutical agent, which is having a little less regulatory compliance, when you cannot claim a therapeutic claim, but you can say beneficial effect. So this plant have this beneficial effect. So their therapeutic claims cannot be made. Then it comes under Ayush mode, where it will go as a Ayurvedic claims. What are the Ayurvedic claims for this plant? And then in that mode, either as a Ayurvedic drug or Ayurvedic proprietary medicine, it can go. Proprietary medicine means we have done our own research and modified whatever the Ayurvedic concept is, that we have done our scientific input and then transform into an Ayurvedic proprietary medicine. And then next come the phytopharmaceutical, which is like very rigorous compliance are required. So for phytopharmaceutical development, if I see, based on my very little experience, if we have to do research, it will take at least 10 years more. Because I will take some example, say recently CDRI got a clinical trial approval for one of the plant, Picrorhiza, for the treatment of NAFLD, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And if you look at the history of that plant, almost 30 years of phytochemistry and biology work was done. And then after all this data, now moving to the phytopharmaceutical mode, they got the approval for the clinical trial. Although that plant is already available in Ayush mode and nutraceutical mode. Now, if you see in red sandalwood, research, just now the research has started. So moving forward, our aim, like that Dr. Amit told, we have collaboration with the Ministry of Ayush. So we will be looking for the nutraceutical or Ayush mode first, and then into the phytopharmaceutical mode. Because a lot of further studies needs to be required. Now here also, like chemical dynamics, as sir also told that what are the chemical dynamics, means the chemical constituent present, which is the first criteria for the phytopharmaceutical. You have to define the chemical constituent, and then only you can develop it further. So chemical dynamics is very important. What is the chemical dynamics, age-related chemical dynamics? What is the role of centellings and other compounds? How it is, how the variation happening based on the geographical location, what is growing in the Andhra Pradesh and nearby area or West Bengal or other part of the country. So like a lot of research is required in that area, but we'll not go into that thing, but our immediate roadmap will be to collaborate with Ayush and then try to develop something out of it. So now I will move into my presentation. So this project was basically designed based on the fact that diabetes is a complex disease. We know that this happens, like each and every person around you will see they're having a high blood glucose level. Now, if you look into the pathophysiology or the molecular mechanism by which the diabetes is happening, so based on that, several targets have been identified. Against this target, drugs have already been developed. Now, one of the most latest target which was identified and drug was developed was the alpha glucosidase enzyme. So what happens is whenever we are eating a food, we eat a lot of carbohydrate, starch, all those things. And then this needs to be digested by our body. Body means the intestine. If they are not digested, we cannot absorb it. So the digestion means the polysaccharides needs to be cleaved into oligosaccharide, oligosaccharide to monosaccharide. And only monosaccharide can be absorbed through our intestine. And this part is taken care by two enzymes, alpha amylase and alpha glucosidase. Alpha amylase is present in our saliva. So when we chew the food, we are basically trying to hydrolyze the polysaccharide into oligosaccharide. And when this food goes into the stomach and intestine, there also pancreatic alpha amylase is there, which further cleaves the oligosaccharide to disaccharide, trisaccharides, and then alpha glucosidase come and do the final action to release the monosaccharides. And this is the major problem in the diabetic patients when they are already having a high blood glucose level. As soon as they take the meal, there is a sudden rise in the blood glucose level. That is called the postprandial hyperglycemia. So treating the high glucose level is another issue, and treating or controlling the immediate or sudden rise in the blood glucose after meal is another issue. So always alpha glucosidase inhibitors are prescribed with all other anti-diabetic drugs. Now, why natural products are so important, whatever is coming from the nature. So all the drugs clinically approved in this category as alpha glucosidase inhibitors are either natural product or derived from the nature. So the first one, if you see the acarbose, the first drug in this category was approved by what research was done by Bayer Pharmaceutical, and it was done. And that was originated from I forgot, the actinoplane species, it's a microbe, and from that this compound was identified. Now there is, this is the pointer. No, I'm asking for pointer. Sorry, it's a pointer is not working. Yeah, and then the second structure, if you see 1-deoxynogeremycin. So in China, if you go and see, the mulberry leaves are widely used as a tea for the treatment of diabetes or management of diabetes. And later research was found that this compound 1-deoxynogeremycin, which is abundantly present in mulberry leaves, is having alpha glucosidase inhibitory activity. Further, medicinal chemistry based approach led to the development of miglitol and voglibose. Based on that structure, 2 new drugs which were clinically approved for the treatment of alpha glucosidase inhibitor. So during starting from my career after BPharm from University of Rajasthan, I worked at NIPER, so I've been trying to explore all the chemicals having alpha glucosidase inhibitory activity, because there is a huge scope. We have a history that all the compounds or drugs approved in this category are from nature. And I keep on trying to identify the molecule which have this inhibitory activity, right? So based on this hypothesis, so this is what I have already explained actually how it is working. So I'm just skip it. And so this is the background. So when we wanted to work on this class, we have done our thorough literature search, and we found that Pterocarpus marsupium is also having compound which are having alpha glucosidase inhibitory activity. Several Ayurvedic and Ayurvedic proprietary medicine have been developed in collaboration with CSIR and ICMR earlier, somewhere around 2000 and all, and a lot of products are already in the market. And then when we did our literature search on Pterocarpus centellinus, we found there are some indication from the Chinese. There are 2 studies were published by Chinese where they have indicated that yes, this plant extract have some preliminary alpha glucosidase inhibitory activity. However, at the molecular phytochemical level, nothing was reported. Then we did our phytochemical literature search on the Pterocarpus centellinus, and we found that this class of molecules are already reported, which is like basically reported by Chinese few years ago. This involves chalcones, neoflavones, benzofurones, IUM class of molecule. And then we tried to link the phytochemistry with the Pterocarpus marsupium, and we found that they also have the similar class of molecules. Right? So this gives us a confidence that yes, whatever the traditional practice is being done with both the plants, they are somehow linked with the alpha glucosidase and then these phytochemicals. Because here is a practice that you take the tumbler, put a water, keep it overnight, in the early morning, empty stomach you take, and then that will help to cure your diabetes. And that is what is required. Alpha glucosidase inhibitors are always given prior to the meal, not after the meal, because after the meal it's of no use. You have to inhibit the enzyme before taking the food. Right? So that is the whole concept. So, again, I don't know. Can you please check? No, it's not. Slide is not. Yeah. So next slide, please. Yeah, so the overall objective, so there are multiple objectives are there. So overall objective is to identify the chemical constituent which are having this alpha glucosidase and alpha amylase inhibitory activity. So to achieve this, we had proposed earlier that ultrafiltration liquid chromatography, which is a fast screening technique, which we will be using it. But for this purpose, we required a ultrafiltration membrane, which are actually imported. But post-COVID, that was some issues with procuring the material which are made in China and other things. So that time we taken the classical approach, although we have procured it and we are doing it. Next slide, please. So this is what initially when we tried to get a material from Andhra Pradesh, but there was some technical delay, administrative delay. So we approached the PCCF research on West Bengal, Dr. J.T. Matthew, and he helped us to get the material. So he provided us this log, which was naturally fallen during the Amphan cyclone. And they have given us this log, and we started doing our research with this material first, as we discussed earlier. Next slide. So this is the classical thing we have done, the same thing what we have done for anti-cancer also, same thing we have done here. Next slide, please. And then we started screening the extracts, and we found that yes, this extract have the activity, and then the activity is distributed along the toluene and ethyl acetate fraction. Here you can see the difference. In case of anti-cancer activity, the toluene fraction was more active, but in case of this thing, we found that ethyl acetate fraction is more active. So the chemical constituents present in 2 different fractions are having 2 different type of activities. So like they are more prone to have the anti-diabetic activity, whatever the compound enriched in the ethyl acetate fraction, then the compound enriched in the toluene fraction have a different trend towards the anti-cancer activity. So that we have clearly observed it. Next slide, please. So the same thing. So this is the complete phytochemistry work where we have done the lot of silica gel column chromatography and then crystallization, HPLC, semi-preparative HPLC for the purification of each and individual component. And all these compounds, we have purified them from the toluene fraction. So here we can see we found stilbene, some sesquiterpenes, and then cow maize strains. So stilbene and sesquiterpenes were previously reported. So some studies which were done in the locality of Tirupati in somewhere in 1970s, these molecules were reported from red sandal hardwood. But the cow maize strain class of molecule, which you see the last 2 molecules here, which were we got from the toluene fraction. Next slide, please. And here also you see the most of this similar molecule present in the ethyl acetate fraction. So this is the first time we had found that this class of molecule are present in the red sandalwood. Nobody else has reported before. And we could not find the compound which were reported by the Chinese group, basically the benzofurones, iurone, and neolignin class of molecule. But if you look at the biogenetically, so there is a biogenetically similarity between the genesis of formation of this compound, how plants synthesize this molecule. The basic genesis of this molecule or pathway or enzyme involved in that are similar. Now here the question comes, what we were talking about the chemical dynamics, that at what age you are collecting the plant, and then how this molecule are actually synthesized, whether first the benzofuran and neolignans are synthesized and then they transform into coumarins, because these cow maize strains have an additional ring, the C ring, if we look at here. So possibly, I just hypothesize, this is a like very basic scientific question which needs to be addressed over the period, whether it's an age-related matter where different class of molecules are synthesized and deposited and finally converted into the centellines. Because there was a report, a total synthesis of centellines were reported by some US group where they try to do the total synthesis of centellines, the complete organic synthesis of the centellines. And they told that this class of molecule, if you take similar skeleton, then you can make a total synthesis. Similar thing can happen in plant also because plant have their own enzyme and biosynthetic mechanism. So this is like a very basic scientific question which needs to be addressed over the period, but this is our finding as of now. Next. Now, when we purify this molecule, we have to characterize them. So when we purify this molecule, we'll get as a white powder. And from white powder, we have to get the structure. What is the structure of that? So all the compound, what we have done, we usually characterize using the NMR spectroscopy, Machi spectroscopy, IR spectroscopy. And when we subject a chemical compound to an NMR spectroscopy, we get this type of spectra. And from this spectra, we have to conclude the structure, that what is the structure, what basic structure is that. So I'm not going into the detail of this, but I'm showing this data because we have done all these things for each and every compound. I've just shown the data for a couple of compounds here. So you can skip this next two slides. Yeah, same thing. So this involves a lot of like, we get this spectra and we have to conclude the structure. So 1D NMR, 2D NMR, it involves proton NMR, carbon NMR, depth analysis, different types of experiments are there. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah. And then this study we have done up to like September 2021. And then after the efforts of Justin Mohanji and PCCF Andhra Pradesh, we were able to collect the material from Central Red Centers Depot somewhere in October 2021. That is the log we got from the Central Red Centers Depot. And now again, we doing the comparative analysis. So go to the next slide, please. Then we have done a comparative analysis. For comparative analysis purpose to make the study little fast, we have done a successive extraction. Now here you can see the extractive yield. So when we have done the hexane extract, the AP material we got 0.7% and West Bengal 0.4%, ethyl acetate we got 8.8%, West Bengal 0.6%, methanol 7% in case of AP, and then in case of West Bengal 1.4%. So in terms of extractive yield, Andhra Pradesh material is much superior. Now, again, the question comes same thing, because what material we got from the West Bengal, we are not aware of the age of the plant material. What we got from the Andhra Pradesh, they told probably it's like 60 to 70-year-old plant material, right? Now, if you go back, previous slide, again, previous, yeah. So these are the two logbook. So the West Bengal material is not fully red. Only the center part is red and the outer part is the white. But the Andhra Pradesh material is completely red. So okay. Yeah. So, but what we have done in case of
the material you see in Andhra Pradesh is from forest.
Yes.
And the material which you see in West Bengal is from private lands.
No, it's from the forest land, but it was under silviculture cultivation.
It is not from the forest, the types of forests of
yes, sure.
endemic region of red centers.
Right.
From other forests. Even in Andhra also, if you look at the red centers wood taken from a valley area or a fringe for the forest area, it will not look the same as the red centers of the hilly areas of Nalamala Hills, Chhattisgarh Plateau. And what you find is the best one.
Yes.
After removal of the sapwood. Here you have got sapwood also.
Yes.
But if the extract that you are referring to is from hardwood only, then it's comparable.
Yes, okay. Because in that case, we have done the complete plant material mixing, including sap and hardwood, and then we have done it. So like that's why I'm saying like a lot of research is required. What is happening in sapwood, what is happening in hardwood, of the same plant material, different geographic location, like as you said, on the hill or valley or going on the farmer lands, like a lot of variations are there. So next slide, please. Yeah. So in terms of that one is okay. Now then we have done the HPLC profiling. As you can see on the left-hand side, there is a little difference in the hexane extract of West Bengal and AP. There are some peaks which are present in the AP material, which are not present in the West Bengal material, and same thing is happening in other extract as well. This was like recently, last week only we have done it because, yeah, next slide, please. So same thing. Now we have done the enzyme inhibitory activity, comparative enzyme inhibitory activity. Here we can say, in terms of alpha glucosidase, AP material is much better. But in case of alpha amylase, West Bengal material is better, right? So hexane extract is having this activity, and then AP is having the ethyl acetate fraction. So this is the same activity we got in the earlier material. The first study what we have done isolated on the West Bengal material, the results are comparative. in terms of alpha glucosidase. When we talk about the drug discovery and this thing, alpha amylase have very less weightage compared to the alpha glucosidase. Everybody talks about the alpha glucosidase. Alpha amylase is complementary to alpha glucosidase, but nobody tried to develop a drug against alpha amylase. So here also, if we consider alpha glucosidase, then AP material is much better. You see at least 3-fold difference is there in the IC50 values. So this material is much better. Next slide, please. So as we said that initially we proposed the ultra-fast lipid chromatography method, which we'll be using for the screening purpose. So now we have implemented this one. So this is the overall protocol. What we do, we take the enzyme, we treat it with the extract, and then we use the ultracentrifugation things. Whatever compound which bind with the enzyme, they will retain in the filtration membrane. Other things will be washed off. And then from there, again, we detach the molecule using the methanol, whatever is the coming, that we analyze using the liquid chromatography, HPLC or LCMS, and then we try to identify the molecule. Next slide, please. So here we have done the comparative assessment of all those things, UFLC, and these are the peaks which are actually having the affinity towards the enzyme. Now we are expecting that these peaks will be what we have already identified the compound. So next comparative assessment is going on. So maybe in a couple of months, we will have the complete concrete data and comparative study on these things. So next slide, please. So at the site, simultaneously, for all this identified compound, we have also done the enzyme inhibitory activities, and we found that this compound have varying degree of activity against alpha glucosidase and alpha amylase. And then among this, we have also identified some new chemical entities, which is the core of the phytochemistry, where we try to identify new chemicals which are not known to the world before. So a couple of common stains are completely new chemical structures, and a couple of common stains which were not known naturally, however, they were known synthetically. So all these things are the first time this information we have generated. So now further comparative assessment at the end of the West Bengal and this thing, using the HPLC, LCMS analysis and having their presence of all these molecules on those things are going on. Next slide, please. So future prospect, like some few other compounds also we have purified, the characterization is going on. These molecules are like so complex, having 30-40 carbons. That work is going on. And then in-depth dereplication studies using LCMS, MS, like dereplication means what is already present, what is not present. So comparative assessment of West Bengal and Andhra Pradesh, that is also going on. Next, please. Since this conference is happening at the heart of Tirupati, where Icer is also involved, having a strong chemistry group, and we are sitting in Kolkata having a little less access to the biomaterial available here. So some of the burning questions, what we have, like few next scientific research, right? So whatever the tree takes 30 to 50 years to give the good quality of heartwood, completely red color heartwood, right? So, and then the color is coming from the centennials, basically. Now the phenyl propanoid pathway, what I talked about, the biosynthetic pathway, is the major pathway involved in the synthesis of this one. So what is the chemical dynamics with respect to the age, with respect to the geographical location, with respect to the heartwood and sapwood? This question needs to be addressed for the further development and promotion of this thing. If we find that the chemical compound what we have identified are basically more enriched in the sapwood, why we'll wait for 50 years to get the red sandalwood? Other 10-year-old plant material will be sufficient for us if these compounds are already present. So here in terms of therapeutic efficacy, we are not worried about the centennial or red color. We are worried about the therapeutic or effective compounds. If we can get these compounds after 5 years of age or 10 years of age, we need not to worry for 10 years, 30, 50 years. So, and that information will be generated after a lot of research on all these type of materials and then all those things. So, and then chemical composition and pigment concentration. So these things needs to be understood. And if we generate all this data, I'm just thinking way forward. If you see the plant material, just take, extract it and say what is the age of this plant material. If you can make a correlation between the chemical composition with respect to age, and you just take a sample and do analysis and say, okay, this is 10-year-old plant, this is 50-year-old plant or 100-year-old plant. This will be a way forward for the quality control purpose of the material. So, but it required a lot of research on this phytochemical area. So why I'm talking about this thing, because the Icer is here and maybe they can take it up this further. Definitely, we are also working on it. Apart from this, when we collected the plant material from the West Bengal, we have also collected the bark. As you can see, that a lot of bark was there. We requested PC-shaped West Bengal to give us a lot of leaf also. We are working side by side on this thing for the neurological effect. If they have some compound which have the neurological benefits, that working being funded by our institute, director funded what we call our in-house project. We are working on that. We are generating some data on that. Maybe once we have the complete data, we will share with NBA definitely, but that is out of the scope of this project. We just started working on that. So once we have more data, we'll keep on sharing with the NBA so that they can use the data for the benefit of farmers and promotion of this material. Next. So I would like to thank NBA for the financial support. So then Director IICB Arun Bandyopadhyay, PCCF Andhra Pradesh, PCCF West Bengal, Dr. Srivastava, then the scholars who are associated with this project, our central instrumentation facility. And right now I'm like 7 students are working in my lab, including 4 PhD students and 3 project students. My lab is funded by NBA, IU, CSIR and IICB. Thank you very much. Queries if we have any. Sir.
IICB has come out with the 2 utilities.
Yes.
For red sanders, one for cancer and one for diabetes.
Yes.
I would suggest that quickly go for a patent.
Yes.
Otherwise, once you start publishing, some other company or some other firm will go for a patent. So quickly go for a patent so that you take full credit for this process.
Okay.
And then pass on this information to ICMR also and also to the Ayush Ministry.
Yes.
So that this can be commercially exploited.
Yeah. So in yes, sir. So in
process can be commercially exploited.
CSR basically works on mission mode projects. In CSR, we also have a phytopharmaceutical mission. Okay. So that missions require that you generate the preclinical data and then you present in there and you get a lot of funding inside also. When I discussed with our director and I wanted to work on the bark and leaves also, he gave like internal funding. So he also gave a lot of funds. 2 of the instruments were supported by NBA. Whatever small instrument required for this work, that was also supported by director. So as we said, we are working on the neurological aspect of this thing, whether they have some effect on Parkinson disease and the Alzheimer disease also. That we are working separately with another scientist in IICB, Dr. Joy Chakravarti. So we are working actively on this plan. And
this diabetes thing may be true because there is already a traditional knowledge that water taken from this cups made out of red sanders helps in diabetes treatment. So this could be definitely a success story for you.
Yes, sir. So we are looking.
What he has suggested has a lot of commercial value suggestion. For because if the moment somebody comes to know that there is utility here, it will be exploited commercially.
Right.
And a lot of farmers are cultivating red sanders and they don't know where to dispose it of. So this could be one of the options for them to dispose it of. So as I said, you have to apply for a patent.
Yes, sir. We'll try to, because we have an internal system of applying patent.
Whatever the system, but
we will follow it and we'll try to do it, sir.
And at the end of the day, you give a clear-cut roadmap for further research and further activity.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. We are running late, so we'll probably shorten lunch and start lunch at 1:30 instead of 1:15. And if everybody's okay with that, we'll try and do 2 talks between now and lunch. So we come back for the last 2 talks after lunch. Yeah. So the next speaker is Dr. Senthil Kumar.
So very good afternoon, sir. So we are running short of time. I hardly take 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes. So this is a project on value addition to the red sanders for skin care as well as the healthcare properties. It's for 2 years. Next one, please. Oh, sorry. Yeah, okay. So the main objective is to understand the healthcare and skincare properties of various plantation grown red sanders. During the last 2 reviews, and then experts have suggested to compare with the what's called original stands. So though we have collected samples from the plantations, and then we have also collected samples from the natural stands to compare it. This is a simple process, extraction process that we have done. Straight away we'll come to the, so far we have collected almost around 108 samples from Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh. We have collected, actually we concentrated on bark as well as the hardwood, but last time experts suggested to go for leaves as well. So we have collected leaves. So altogether we have collected 108 samples so far. And then, these are the locations that we have collected. These are the different districts in Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh and Karnataka. So these are the locations. I'll just skip all these things. As far as the extracts is concerned, last doctor from West Bengal, they have given detailed extraction procedures. We have followed the two different extraction methods. There is acetone as well as methanol. We are not getting into ethyl acetate and then non-polar solvent like hexane and all. So these are the yield that we have got. So mostly Andhra Pradesh, obviously it gives very good extract when compared to the plantation grown, because the age is one of the important factors. So maximum we got almost around 16.15% from the soya districts. This is the quantitative of analysis of various chemicals in the heartwood as well as bark of these red centers. So all the 108 samples that we have made. And then we have gone into GCMS analysis, and then as Dr. The phytochemistry rightly told, the age is one of the important factors for the santalene content. None of the samples from the plantation grown, it is almost around 10 to 15 years of old plantations have santalene A and B, sir. As sir rightly asked me that whether it is having santalene. None of the samples from the plantation grounds are having the santalene. Yeah, is santalene A and B. We are looking for different, even for we have gone into a hexane extract, we have not gone. As sir rightly told that whether other compounds which may have different therapeutic effects, we are looking for that one. So these are the compounds that that we have identified through GCMS analysis. And there are certain compounds which are very, very prominent. So none of the compounds are what's called new from our side, but the compounds which are present in some other plants are new, are reported first in this one. And then we have gone into molecular docking studies. With this one, we have gone into molecular docking studies for antimicrobial, anti-inflammatory, as well as anti-diabetic, as well as wet lab, we have gone into antimicrobial activity. And based on these results, we have come out with this soap because it is having very good result, as well as we have made a cream, this skin can cream, and then we have tested with whether it is following the BA standards or not. So this is the compound we are looking for these anti-inflammatory as well as anti-diabetic and antimicrobial properties. These are the some of the triterpenes as well as some of the alkaloids we have identified from the hardwood as well as the bark of plantation grown red centers, and we are not yet getting into the this natural stands. So we have extracts as well, and we are going for analyzing all these things. So these are the main compounds, that is some of the triterpenoids as well as the some of the alkaloids are having very good activity, having good very docking score, which will be used as a promising therapeutic agents, most important for skin care as well as the healthcare properties. So these are the docking results. With this some triterpenoids. So this is for anti-diabetic properties. Sir rightly told that we have gone into alpha amylase activities as well as this dry lab bioinformatics tools. So we got almost minus 3.4 is a very good docking score. This is for antimicrobial property, and then based on this one and the extract, we made it into the soap. We use very less quantities, only 30 ppm we have used for making soaps. Not so if it is a very strengthened the color, and then the color of the soap will be dark, and then it leads to something, because we use the very small quantities in the trial and error method in the combinations. And also we have made a skincare creams there, and then we have tested in Tamil Nadu Testers Private Limited, and then they have tested, and it follows all the BA standards, and the microbial load is very, very low while preparing this. This is very, very important. Other smoothness and other properties we have tested. It passed through this one. So we have also attempted for lipstick preparations, and then it is also good. And it is for very few samples that we have made. It is only for plantation growth. But we have to compare all the almost around 80 samples we have to compare, and 80 samples we have to check whether the compound of our interest is having any variations or not. Based on that one, we can shortlist and we can rank. These are the plantation grown red centers. With this age can be utilized for these purposes, and these for skincare property. This is for healthcare properties. This is for some other properties. This is what we would like to shortlist, and then we would like to recommend to NBA for further analysis. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Sandil Kumar, for such a brief presentation also. We'll take some questions now. We have some time.
Yes, sir. Last 2 days I'm using it. And then I told my wife to take risk, and then she was also using. And then I told my son as well.
You are spreading a very dangerous path.
It's a very
when in the market we do get a neem soap.
Yes, sir.
And we have a kunkudu soap. Our
Yes, sir.
GCC is marketing kunkudu soap, and we
Yes.
have a sandalwood
Soap.
sandal soap.
Yes, sir.
So a soap from red sandal should look like red sandal soap, typical, not of this color.
Yes, sir. You are right, sir. But the color, if we give the more color, because we use very little, 50 ml, I used to make it into 15 kgs of soap. So just I give the 50 ml of bark extract, the methanol extract to make it into. No, sir, that's what. So we are not using the santalene. Yes, sir. So as sir told that that color will not come with this bark extract, sir. So if we go for hardwood, we may get with the higher age, more than 20 years old hardwood extract, we may get that color, sir. But we will try it to make it into a red color, the pure red. No issues, sir. We will make it, sir. Next time I will bring it with the pure red sandal without adding any colors. Yes, sir. Thank you. Sure.
You should try test for
Yes,
the
sir. Yes, sir.
allergy reactions. and all.
Sure. Actually, one of our students he used, and then she told that it is having very softness as well as whitening property. That is why we have gone into this one lipstick. So whitening in the sense it should not be very rigid, sir, and then it should be wiped off immediately. It should. Yeah, sorry, thanks, sir. It should be the one, sir. Thank you.
There is a question on Zoom. Can we know the special importance of red sandals for environment and for any uses for any herbivorous animals as food?
Oh, that I don't know.
Maybe
Because
not directed to
during
this. Maybe not to.
okay.
What's use anything? Other cattle is not eat.
I see.
What's in our area, but that is not in forest.
Okay, thank you. Just in case the person did not hear, insects and probably feed on the bark.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'd like to call Dr. Kunni Kannan.
Yeah, good afternoon to all. This is a meeting on conservation and the restoration of Eastern Ghats. I could actually work in different parts of Eastern Ghats, starting from Nilgiris, and that is starting point of Eastern Ghats from Western Ghats. Then move on to the Ecology Hills, for the medicinal plant conservation areas. Then got a chance to work in Araku Valley for a consultancy program on bauxite mining. And some of our scientists from Institute of Forest Genetics and Tree Breeding still working on different hillocks of the Eastern Ghats like Nalamalai, Pachamalai, and Kalrayan Hills. Now, the main aspect of my presentation is on the project sanctioned by the NDA regarding the red sander. Even before going to that, so we have studied the NDF studies as per the CITES on the red sanders of whatever the red sander growing areas in Andhra Pradesh and some part of the Tamil Nadu, the plantations. And we submitted the report to the Ministry of Environment and Forest on deciding the quota for the export or something. But it is submitted to the ministry. And with that, I think this project also came up for having the domestication, sustainable utilization and conservation of Pterocarpus sandalinus genetic resources. So next, please. Yes. Yeah, this project is having 4 sub-projects and 4 research team for each sub-projects. That is on the delineation of provenance, characterization and assemblage of genetic resource for domestication. Then the refinement of micro and macro propagation techniques for mass multiplication of identified genotypes. Then genetic structure assessment for gynecological zonations. Then the development of DNA marker sets for origin verification and timber tracking. So coming to the first sub-project, that is the survey. And these are the different locations we have taken up for the collection of identifying the provenances and then clusters. And on the basis of initial survey and some of the information provided by the our own another institute of ICFRA, that is the IFB Hyderabad. This has actually identified the different provinces, and according to this mapping and province identification, all the other studies are happening. So these are some of the identified tree species, individuals from different forest ranges. And some of them are from the plantations. Tirupati division, then Rajampet division. Chittoor. So these are different identified CPTs that candidate plus trees. And from this location only, all other sub-projects got the samples for the continuing the studies. Then the seeds are collected from all the such identified candidate plus trees, and then seedlings raised. And this is our nursery within that first sub-project activities, and produce a lot of seedlings for the further studies. That is the all activities done in the first sub-project, and still already the team is in the field now, and the sub-project leader is here. The team is already in the field for working there. Then coming to next refinement of micro and macro propagation techniques. It's already some portion of the studies findings are already presented in the earlier review meeting, and these are the activities followed in that existing propagation method refinement, then mass multiplication of selected genotypes, and establishment of demo trials using that same, and assess the growth performance in the field. So we have tried different method like from seeds, then from the seeds, seedlings, and we took the explants for the further multiplication through the tissue culture. So this is a different tissue culture protocols we followed, and we could produce the seedlings out of the tissue culture. But there are certain issues, so that will be addressed in the coming period of the project. And another method also tried for taking the samples, branch cuttings, and root suckers and coppice shoots. And from that also we got the explants. And these experiments are also used in the different route like multiplication through the micropropagation and then macropropagation. And this is some of the achievements what we made from the rooting response of clones to different hormone concentrations. We could produce the seedlings out of these vegetative methods. And now this is the experiment to produce more number of the sprouts out of this and for taking to both the roots. Then coming to the next sub-project, that is genetic structure assessment for gynecological somations, that this actually lead to getting the locations where the high diversity of this red sand is available. So accordingly, the studies happen and selected germplasm from different same first sub-projects. What are the CPTs collected, that is again used. And in this work, actually, there is a first refinement, even confirmation of the chromosome number of the species has done, and it is published. Because earlier it was reported as 22. Now we confirm that with different collections, this is not 22, it is 20. So that itself is the first information for this. And it is published a paper, Genetic Resources and Crop Evaluation. Then genome size estimation also we have done, and when identified some of the areas that the high priority conservation areas. So the further studies required in this, and the genome size estimation is done. And we found out that the genome size is the 770 million base pair. That is the result we got. Then leaf transcriptome for SSR development, through RNA extraction and quality check. These are all the different information we generated through this particular tools. And gene ontology categories. This is the different process, then molecular functions and cellular components. So we have got the information on this line, and it will be actually leading to the, again, identifying the high diversity populations. Then different SSR classes and their amplification is shown in this. And we studied the chloroplast genome, and through that we can even found out the whole genome sequencing for this particular species. Then and next, the fourth sub-project is on development of DNA marker sets for organ verification and timber tracking in this species. So here also we got very good information. So the information is the first time for the science, certain information we got. That is the first report of chloroplast genome in both the species. Like we have studied and compared different species like Pterocarpus dalbergioides and Pterocarpus entalinus, Pterocarpus indicus. Then the similarly looking species, that is Dalbergia latifolia. Then we found out the first report of chloroplast genome in both the species, like Pterocarpus dalbergioides and Dalbergia latifolia. Then we under this same the aspect of study, nucleotide diversity analysis were made, and again these 4 species were compared, and a new barcode, 2 new barcodes are identified. And that can be used for further the tracking, even the timber tracking or the origin verification, all this can be possible. So further studies is needed in this. Then on the basis of the phylogeny and the diversity hotspots identification, so all the different aspect of studies conducted, and then the cluster analysis done, and it's found that the Pterocarpus sandalinus and Pterocarpus dalbergioides, actually it is geographically very different, but it's clustered together. So Andaman species and then red sander. So that is one information we got. And what are the relateness and distances out of these studied species we could find out. And then here also we could found that the first insight into the phylogenetic relates between the sandalinus and dalbergioides. Further studies needed, even their geographical information also can be brought in, and then we can even lead to a theory of that, even the distance of how it is moved to an island location, because very related species, mainland and then island, so they are very close. So maybe a different theory can be brought out. Then through PCR studies, we will be now moving to the whole genome, bringing of the whole genome sequencing of this particular species also possible. Yeah, these are the different barcodes, and even with these barcodes also, we can now move on to the timber tracking and the origin verification. It's very nice, very clearly it is possible. So this can be applied in the really certified forensic the line, or the capturing the wood source where it is actually originated. And there are further studies to be continued for completely coming out, and we may be requiring some extension in that because time may be requiring. And we are very happy to acknowledge the NBA for the financial support and all other support. Then Andhra Pradesh Forest Department and the full staff members and the PCCF for giving the permission for collection of samples and all the field help what is provided to our team. Thank you very much.
Sir, are there any questions?
Yes, sir. If detailed answer is required, our team members are there. Yeah, okay.
I think there are a few questions. Maybe people can find him at lunchtime. There are at least 2 hands, and I know I also have a question. So, but we can do this over lunchtime, maybe, yeah, so that everyone is not held up. Food is ready and it's outside, so we can come back in 45 minutes. We'll try to stick to 2:15 so that we get back on track. Thank you.